What did you? And my mother went and bought all the books that but they're gonna be banned soon.
Yeah.
When no one knew that.
That was how censorship was.
Good evening, everybody. You can hear my voice, clap once. All right, we are going to get our first meeting of 2026 started. Happy New Year, everyone. I wanna check with Jesse really quick. We have no public comment. All right, then we are gonna jump right into our agenda. To start by passing the minutes from our December 8th meeting. I move to approve the meeting minutes from our instruction work group meeting dated December 8th, 2025. All those in favor?
Second, Mike.
Thank you. All those in favor? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you, Claire, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All right, we'll dive right into, we're gonna hear a mental health update from our team. Superintendent, Dr. Beth.
Thank you, Chair Muldrow, members of the board. Happy New Year. Glad to have everybody back. Hope students and staff and great first day back. Finish up the first semester. Tonight we've got a couple of presentations and I'm going to have assistant superintendent set both of them up. We'll be right to work. Denise.
Thank you, Dr. Gothard. Thank you, Chair Muldrow. Good evening, everyone. And again, Happy New Year 2026. Here we go. It's crazy to say those numbers. So our first presentation tonight is going to be an update on our mental health work, our health partnerships, and also the staffing supports that we have put in place in order to ensure we're meeting the needs of our students. We'll introduce Dr. Professor and Dr. Tracy Scher in just a minute, but I'm going to go through some initial comments. Jesse, can you go to the next one? Our new, okay, the mission is first. Usually we have a, that's okay. So our new MMSD mission, creating safe and inclusive schools, delivering high quality instruction, strengthening relationships and partners with family and our community to achieve student self-determination and educational excellence. I think the mental health update is going to show you how we're ensuring students have the conditions ready to achieve all that we have. Next slide, please. And our vision, to ensure that we are a learning community where all students are valued, challenged, supported, and inspired to reach their. I'm excited to share a little more about both of those in our presentation that follows the mental health update. Both of these are new to our new framework. Next slide, Jesse. And our guiding commitments, making sure that we're leading with equity, fostering belonging, delivering meaningful learning, improving with purpose, and embracing our collective impact. Next slide, Jesse. So you might recall seeing this slide. We've shown this slide for the last few years. This is our district improvement plan goals, and this is where we hope to be by the end of 2027. This is working under our current district improvement plan. Sometimes we toggle between this and our new performance objectives. You can see that we're focused on our 3 strategic framework goals and also focused on literacy, math, high school completion, attendance rates, and also ensuring that we have intentional focus for our African-American children and youth to excel in school. And this will be shown tonight through the mental health work and how that is part of how we're ensuring we meet these goals by 2027. Next slide. Oh, it's okay. So as Jesse is pulling up the slides, again, I'm going to introduce 2 of our presenters from our team tonight, Dr. Leah Esser, who is our Executive Director of Student and Staff Supports, and Dr. Tracy Scher, who is our Director of Mental Health. You all probably remember Kristen Getchow, who used to be the Director of Mental Health, who retired last June. And since then, we've had the pleasure of Tracy taking that role and really leading the mental health team. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to both of them to give an update and also some of the successes we've had in this area.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we are sharing an update on student mental health and well-being in MMSD and sharing how board investments are translating into real support for students. We'll highlight the essential work of our school-based mental health providers, our psychologists, social workers, counselors, and nurses, whose presence in our schools reflect a sustained commitment to student care. Show how students and families experience a coordinated continuum of support that emphasizes prevention, early intervention, and early identification and timely intervention. Finally, we will connect these systems to the board's strategic investments that expand access, strengthen staffing, and create the conditions for student belonging, stability, and academic readiness in our schools. In MMSD, we believe, next slide, sorry, student mental health and well-being are essential to success. To support this, we have developed and used the 5 to Thrive campaign, which provides accessible resources and clear guidance to students and families so they know how and where to access support. Access to mental health programs in MMSD is established through student services teams. For families not already connected to a student services team member, the school nurse is the trusted and welcoming first point of contact. Our student services teams, as I said before, include our school social workers, nurse, school psychologist, and counselor. Together, they function as a coordinated school-embedded mental health system. Across roles, next slide, sorry, Jesse. Across roles, team members promote well-being, identify needs early, and connect students and families to timely and appropriate support. While each role brings specialized expertise, they share overlapping and complementary skill sets as mental health professionals. Together, this coordinated approach ensures our students are supported, connected, and ready to learn. Last month, we revisited our Culture and Climate Universal Framework, which provides a significant and consistent foundation for student mental health and well-being across every school. This evening, we will continue that conversation with a deeper focus on the mental health continuum of support and services. Universally, we ensure our schools have in place all the systems for culturally responsive problem solving, as well as an approach to mental health literacy professional development staff. At this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Scher to outline how our layered mental health approach supports to build on this framework through coordinated services, interventions, and clear pathways to care.
Thank you, Leah, and greetings, members of the board. Our framework or approach to mental health and well-being in the district includes 3 foundational strategies. First is mental health literacy. A key aspect of mental health literacy within MMSD is that our student services teams present to their school staff annually about how all school staff support mental health and well-being in many ways, including through their positive relationships with students. These presentations also include signs a student or a fellow staff member may be struggling, for example, changes in behaviors like sleeping or socializing, expressing feelings of hopelessness, etc. And our student services staff share how to seek additional support for a student through student services teams, including if a suicide risk assessment and safety plan are needed, as the student services staff are trained in conducting both suicide risk assessments and violence risk assessments. And we're excited to share that to this point in the year, 98% of our schools have completed a mental health literacy presentation to all staff compared to 84% last year. A second foundational strategy is universal screening. And through our longstanding district partnerships with the Rainbow Project and Journey Mental Health Center, student services teams screen students for symptoms of depression, anxiety, and/or trauma. All of our schools screen students in at least 1 grade level at elementary, middle, and high school levels. And for students with elevated symptoms, student services staff follow up interviewing students individually. If additional support is needed, student services staff work with parents and guardians to determine the next steps. The third foundational mental health and well-being strategy is strong referral and navigation pathways. Our student services staff connects students and families to supportive services. And we have a district mental health navigator who's bilingual in Spanish and English, who can help families to find mental health supports in the community, handle insurance challenges, and walk alongside families while connecting them with mental health supports. We also have an online mental health navigation platform called Care Solace that all MMSD students and their families and staff and their families can access at no cost to themselves. Leah mentioned our 5 to Thrive mental health and well-being website and materials, which contain information on both school-based and community supports. And we've heard from students and families that they don't always know how to access mental health supports in school or the community. So we continue to share those 5 to Thrive materials and to let students and families know, as Leah mentioned, that school health offices can connect them to student services team staff for mental health and well-being support. Our upcoming slides will provide additional details about the school-based group and individual interventions and wraparound services that our student services staff collaborate with our community mental health partners to provide for our students. Next slide, please. This visual expands a bit on the last points that were made on the prior slide. Our student services staff are represented here as part of schools in the blue circle at the top of the triangle, and they provide screening and individual and group interventions to students who need them. Those student services staff collaborate with our community mental health partners, shown in the blue circle at the left base of the triangle, to provide our students with high-quality mental health interventions. The yellow arrows on all sides of the triangle show that relationships between student services staff, mental health partners, and the district are reciprocal. MMSD contracts with our partners to provide health interventions in our schools, and our student services staff are essential to ensuring the success of these partnerships. They lead screening and referral processes with their student services teams. They communicate with families about intervention options. They coordinate individual therapy services and co-facilitate groups and much more. Our role as a district mental health and well-being team is broadly described by our vision statements in the center of the triangle. Essentially, we work with school teams and community mental health partners to provide a range of mental health support so our students can be well and available for learning. Next, Leah will address how investments in our student services teams have increased our capacity to support student mental health and well-being.
Great, next slide. Strategic board investments have expanded access to student mental health support and have strengthened our school-based practices. Since the 2021-2022 school year, student services staffing has increased by nearly 29 FTE. And we have invested in mental health programs and partnerships such as behavioral health in schools and our continuum related to mental health navigation, bringing care directly into schools and helping students and families connect to support more quickly. This increased capacity also allows the district mental health and well-being team to focus on strengthening practice across student services teams through professional learning and evidence-based and culturally responsive interventions. Together, these investments reduce delays in care, strengthen coordination with community partners, and build a more consistent and equitable system that supports student belonging and readiness to learn. Next slide.
Universal screening was described in the prior slide as one of our foundational mental health and well-being strategies. And Leah also just explained how investment in student services staff improves coordination with our community partners that the board has also invested in. As the turquoise highlights reflect on this slide, across the 3 primary approaches to screening at elementary, middle, and high school levels, last school year, 5,543 students were screened, generally across third, sixth, and ninth grades, with a few schools screening more than one grade. And we'll have final screening numbers available for this school year soon. More than 1,300 students received individual follow-up interviews with a student services staff member as a result of these screenings. And many of those students were then connected with intervention groups or other mental health support at school or in the community. Next slide, please. Strong referral and navigation pathways were described previously as an additional foundational mental health strategy. And because we wanted to show annual reach tonight, the numbers you see on these slides are also from the 24-25 school year. Our district Spanish, English bilingual mental health navigator mentioned previously served 58 students and families through hundreds of sessions. Care Solace, the online navigation platform mentioned previously, served 261 individuals last school year. And we also have a district mental health bilingual resource specialist who has expertise specific to Spanish and English interpretation and translation of medical and mental health services. She served 150 students and families last year, but with this year's expansion of behavioral health in schools, which we'll address shortly, her schedule is overbooked with therapy sessions. Next slide, please. In addition to REST, CBITS, heart, and bounce back trauma intervention groups connected to our screening processes, students, services, staff lead other intervention groups in schools. For example, we partner with Journey Mental Health Center to provide FACE social emotional wellness groups, including for substance use intervention and grief support. And we also partner with Grace directly for grief support for individual students. Next slide. In addition to group supports, we provide more intensive individual services. Our Building Bridges team is part of our district's mental health and well-being team. The Building Bridges team consists of both MMSD and Catholic Charities staff members who work in collaborative pairs. One of these teams is a Spanish English bilingual team. And the larger Building Bridges program is administered by Dane County and provides mental health wraparound services to students and families to help them stabilize and secure services in school and the community. Last year, the MMSD Catholic Charities Building Bridges team served 115 students and families. And our UW Child and Adolescent Psychiatry Partnership Program provided 16 students with psychiatric evaluations and consultations with their families, teachers, and student services teams. Next slide. Our individual mental and behavioral health services include behavioral health in schools and behavioral health services in our school-based health centers. Student services team members coordinate both of these school-based programs, and therapists from each program are embedded in their schools and their school teams. Last year, therapists employed by our partner UW Behavioral Health Youth and Family served 112 students across more than 1,300 sessions with 4 comprehensive high schools. And last year, therapists employed by our behavioral health and schools partner, Children's Wisconsin, served 339 students across more than 6,200 sessions within 16 of our elementary and middle schools. This year, we expanded by 6 schools for a total of 22. So we'd like to highlight BHS just a bit further. Next slide. This slide offers some background information about BHS and its purpose. And next year, we'll celebrate a decade of BHS within MMSD. We've expanded the program a few times over the years, with the most recent expansion of 6 additional schools occurring this school year. And students who access BHS therapy in school have significant mental health concerns that often interfere with learning and engagement and experience barriers to accessing supports in the community. This program is especially effective in large part because those therapists are embedded in our school teams instead of just using space within our schools. Next slide. We've shared a lot about the reach of our programs tonight, and we also wanted to be sure to touch on effectiveness and satisfaction as well. These are current goals in our program and goals that we worked toward last year. So just as an example related to goal 1, last year, 91% of students reported working with their therapist helped them feel better about themselves. Regarding goal 2, 82% of school staff found consultation with clinicians to be helpful. Goal 3, 100% of parents reported being better able to support their students' mental health. And with the 4th goal, as we continue to consider future expansion to additional schools, we are constantly weighing both school teams and partners' capacities to do so, as well as funding sustainability. Next slide. Continuing to consider some current BHS data can help us with understanding reach as well as accessibility of services in terms of some barriers to care, which is a huge purpose of the program. This data is through the end of November of 2025, so this school year, and we can see that 310 students with the 6th school expansion had already been served. Versus 339 at the end of last year. So we are certainly on track with the latest expansion to expand our reach with BHS. And then as of the end of November, we were on the brink of reaching our goal of 60% of students receiving mental health therapy services for the first time. There's only an average of 9 days between referral and receipt of services, which is amazing. Students are getting support quickly. And the vast majority of the students have public insurance or are uninsured, about 88% at this point in the year. And so BHS certainly does not eliminate all barriers to care, but we continue to see positive results related to access. Next slide. At the mid-year mark, we have evaluated some of our successes and challenges to this point. In the interest of time, I'll just say that our biggest success so far this year is that our 6th school expansion is going well. And some challenges, as mentioned, the district mental health BRS need seems to exceed capacity. And so we're continuing to look at that. And then also considering all the variables connected to future expansion. Okay. Before I hand things back to Leah to wrap up, I just wanted to share one more piece of news related to student and staff capacity to provide mental health services for our students. The board will be receiving a memo about this later this month, but we were just notified before break that we were awarded a $1.9 million grant from the Federal Department of Education to prepare school psychologists to deliver early intervention and intensive mental health services to students within MMSD. We've had an ongoing partnership with UW-Madison School Psychology Program to prepare future school psychologists through a previous grant. And the latest grant will allow us to support up to 10 practicum students and interns working within MMSD each year over the next 4 years for a total of up to 40 future school psychologists. So Leah's going to close this out then with some additional future things.
All right, next slide, Jesse. As we continue to move forward, we center our student mental health and well-being within the Excellence Together framework, strengthening and prioritizing our equitable multi-levels of support across MMSD. So a true commitment to this work, both in our department, but in the district as a whole. This includes sustaining strong student services teaming so schools can effectively leverage current allocation, integrate partners and programs into coherent systems, and add resources thoughtfully. We'll continue deepening our collaboration with community partners, including ongoing engagement with the Dane County BIPOC Mental Health Coalition to strengthen culturally responsive approaches and analyze and expand access to care. Finally, we continue to advocate for predictable and stable federal funding so our mental health programs can be scaled and sustained over time, as we have been able to do with programs like BHS in our schools. At this time, I'm going to turn it back to Board Chair Muldrow for discussion.
Thank you so much, Dr. Leah. Sir, I saw board member Vanderkeel's hand, and then I see board president Nichols.
One, I'm thrilled on the work. I have always been a big supporter of CBITS, big supporter of Bounce Back. Personally, I'm one of those who believes BHS has to be, behavioral health services has to be in every school. And that's just something that, but I'm a counselor's kid. So we had it at the kitchen table. It was fun. But on culture and climate, what I worry most about is the stigma that we still have on mental health. Is there a way for students to do this anonymously? Because I can tell you, as someone who had mental health problems, who used to go an hour when I was in middle and high school, because you didn't want people knowing you were seeing a psychiatrist. Is there ways to avoid the stigma?
Yeah, I think absolutely, yeah. It's incredibly important that we hold that tension in two ways. One, in really lifting and teaching and reinforcing that we all have mental health and we all have needs, and taking care of ourselves is really important. So I want to just ground in that. And our student services teams are brilliant in the sense of working with students to understand when, why, how, what conditions, under what circumstances, that they are working together so that that student feels like that's a safe place that they want to be, and it's somewhere that they're actually experiencing some growth and change. We have been having conversations internally with our high school students about just ways in which there's a level of comfort and safety just initiating that initial contact. So once students have established that care, we've got really strong systems in place, and we continue to find ways to initiate that contact in a way that feels safe for students and families.
Because I mean, I'm just doing this on a personal level. I've always been incredibly open on that. And so I wanted people to realize that my second question, what I'm not sure if you can answer, is are you seeing, especially with our bilingual students, a drop because of immigration? And
Drop
how
in,
service in people showing up for services due to fear. Currently, I do criminal defense juvenile. I have had clients who will not go to the courthouse since the Milwaukee judge was arrested. They will only appear by Zoom in a public place.
I'm not sure I can answer it in terms of absolute numbers. Undoubtedly, fears related to many things affect, like you mentioned, access to services and willingness to pursue services. I think that's where those relationships at school become essential, especially with those student services staff members. That's where the trust is built in terms of explaining services and selecting services that a family or student are most comfortable with. I think that also points to our need to continue to provide a continuum of supports. Not every mental health support is the right fit for every student. And while we don't want to chase the shiny new thing, if we're not able to sustain it, we also need to have a menu of options.
And I agree that my other two concerns, if I may, are one, bed availability. I'm thrilled that we are getting people served within 9 days. But on the psychological, get evaluated or inpatient, having done mental health defense work for quite a while, I do worry that we're going to create more to the problem and there won't be enough beds. And so I do worry about that. That's just a side note that can't be answered. And my last one is thrilled of the federal government and grant. One, is the Department of Education reliable? Two, I'm sorry, I have to say it. I hate saying it, but I have to be realistic. Is there strings attached on what can be discussed? For example, can homosexuality be discussed? Can trans be discussed? Can health and abortion and safety be discussed? If our hands are tied or we have to report people, is this something we want to do?
Our legal counsel did review the application and our submission to ensure that it was something we could commit to. And the focus in this round, one of the reasons we believed we could commit to it, the focus in this round of grants is specific to providing early intervention and mental health services within our schools. Things that we do already, bringing those future school psychologists into that work even more.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't any gag orders or restrictions or data that we had to report. Because I don't want to put a target.
Board Member Vandermillen, if I could,
Yeah.
are subject to many changes that are taking place right now. Many, we have no idea what they could be in the future. I think I can speak on behalf of who is a board in our entire community. We are always on finding the best support for students, making sure that we're doing it in a respectful, culturally relevant way, making sure that staff that we put in positions to provide those supports are trained and have the background to do it in a way that is respectful and effective. And, I think that's what this community demands. It's what our students are asking for. How many years now have you heard students advocate for more mental health support?
Every year I've been on the board, all
Right
I
from them. So this is our work. And if we are told that something that we're doing is not acceptable, then we're gonna have to have a conversation amongst ourselves to find ways to deliver what our students need.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And that's all my questions, Chair.
Thank you so much for your questions, Board Member Vandermeulen. I'll hear from Board President Nichols. Board Member Vandermeulen, you started your questions at 5:26. It is now 5:30.
Thank you, Chair Muldrow. And thank you for the update and presentation tonight. I do have several questions. And I first I want to start with 5 to Thrive. So when I go to that website, I see it directs folks to crisis lines and also additional resources. When it comes to the crisis lines, in particular, there's a text hope line with a number. Is that data that are we tracking how many students, staff, or families get reports back from any of the organizations listed that tell us whether or not our students, family, staff are actually utilizing the crisis or the other resources listed on the 5 to Thrive?
Right. And there's there's crisis resources and
Yeah.
that's the GET support that includes crisis as well as additional resources. And so it really depends on the source in terms of whether we're getting data back. So for the national hotlines and text programs, no, we do not receive data back. However, Care Solace is a partner with, we partner with them, we contract with them. And so we're meeting with them regularly to discuss access. And so that's where we were able to say last year, 216 individuals, I think I'm remembering that correctly, from MMSD accessed that resource, that online platform. That could be students and their family members or staff and their family members. So we don't know. We have some additional breakdowns we can look at. We can look by school. We can drill into the data a little bit. But we don't always know exactly who and exactly what circumstances, but that platform provides us a lot of information. We meet occasionally with the Dane County Behavioral Health Resource Center to also talk about the services they're providing in relation to what we're doing for mental health navigation and making sure things are as complementary or coordinated as possible. In fact, some members of our team have presented with members of their team to various mental health organizations in the community. So we maintain a close relationship with them. It's not at the point right now where we're we have an information sharing agreement, for example, with them, but we do have a relate with them.
Okay.
So
That's helpful.
about the
The
extent of
reason
it.
I wanted to start there is because you started tonight's presentation with the 5 to Thrive is like the primary way that you're communicating out to students and to staff about all of the mental health resources that are available. And so I guess what I'm hearing is that the 5 to Thrive is more like an entry point for people to find the resources, but it doesn't necessarily tell us if people are actually accessing it.
Correct,
Oh,
correct.
okay, great. My next question. You had a slide tonight that had like the kind of the rainbow. Can you pull that up?
Slide.
It says slide 9 in our deck, but I don't know if it's the same one. All right. So, you all presented on mental health and well-being in March of 2025. And that the image was different. Still a rainbow, still had the green foundation. But in last year's presentation, the foundation in green said climate and culture as a foundation. And it was listed as teaming, systems of PBIS, restorative justice, and social emotional learning. This year, the image says collaborative school community, equitable classroom practices, equitable school-wide practices, equitable data practices, and teaming. And then also you've added a layer in this year's image, which is the yellow, which was not present last year, which is this culturally responsive problem solving and mental health literacy. Can you talk to me about what shifted from last year to this year? What does this image actually represent? Is it a theory of change? Is it a system of interventions and supports? And definitely, why is it different in the green from last year, specifically calling out restorative justice, and this year going to equitable classroom, equitable practices, equitable data? Yeah, so if you could just explain that, and what is cultural responsive problem solving?
Absolutely. So when we met last month, Cynthia Moore, Lily Hingartner, and I talked a bit about our universal. We have over the years made some changes and shifts at how we are approaching our culture and climate work. So we have found that schools have made decisions of like, I'm an RJ school, period, versus I'm a cell school or I'm a PBIS school, like where they're putting their focus on a program as opposed to a practice. And so what we did through our culture and climate work, and we're into now year 2-ish of this shift, is really naming the things that need to be in place and then supporting our schools with the programs and practices that they could utilize in order to meet that intent. So for example, the equitable school-wide practices would mean that we have a very restorative approach to discipline, that we're thinking about RJ as the foundation for everything that we do. It also might be equitable school-wide practices as related to the PBIS concept of developing shared expectations for how schools operate, or the developmental designs approach to a social contract. So essentially, there are a lot of strong pathways and programs in order to build a school's culture and climate. And rather than think about it in an isolated like brand name, we're really thinking about what's the sentiment that exists beyond that. So this visual is expanded in our culture and climate world to show specifically those practices that you're referring to in a more concrete manner. The culturally responsive problem solving piece is really that intermediary step where our schools are thinking about their overall systems for addressing student needs before things emerge and once things are emerging. And so this is not new work. If you really think about this through the lens of a multi-tiered system of support, culturally responsive problem solving exists within our overall SIT student service intervention team process. But this renewed focus or more intentional focus on culturally responsive problem solving provides us the opportunity and the lens to think about student needs much more holistically. So we're not just thinking about the student themselves, but we're thinking about environmental pieces. We're thinking about other aspects of whole child development. So it really becomes that problem solving piece that helps us to make some decisions about what of those more intensive interventions that Tracy talked about are appropriate for student needs. So figuring out what the behavior is, what that function of that behavior is, putting those plans and systems in place. For lack of a better conception, this is really the MTSS RTI triangle, with the base being our foundational priorities, that middle piece being what is universal but is targeted universal. So targeting that mental health literacy with all staff and supporting our student services teams to ensure that all schools have culturally responsive problem solving systems, and that we're really upping our game in terms of how those conversations happen in schools.
Okay, so if I were to replace this image with like an MTS triangle, you're saying the green and the yellow are the like universal foundational pieces. And then as you kind of move up the rainbow, you would imagine there are some tier 2 and then some really high intensive tier 3.
Yes.
Okay,
And it's hard to fully encapsulate in one singular tier because of the
yes, I get it.
Yes.
It's not a perfect.
Exactly.
Okay. I think what I'm still struggling with is our use of the word culturally responsive and the equitable, and equitable. Not because I don't believe that that's a value we hold. I want to know how it shows up. What, and you please, if you might, and if you can't, it's okay. I'm trying to understand, you have 52 schools. And there are student services staff working in each of the schools, each school with its own student demographics. It's situated in very different neighborhoods and different systems that are set up. What exactly does culturally responsive problem solving look like at Lori Mann Carey Elementary School versus Hamilton Middle School?
I'll start and then you can jump in. I think what is critical is the consistency in the process. The needs may be different for students and schools. The resources available for them may look different as well. But the overall process of culturally responsive problem solving allows us to look at areas of identified need and then hypothesizing what the student, looking at the student needs, hypothesizing what the needs are related to, collecting data, interpreting data, selecting intervention, and overall improvement of our culturally responsiveness within intervention. So it's a framework through the Department of Public Instruction that we are using to organize and support our schools in building their practices. There is currently still a level of variability depending on the school. And one of the things that we're really working hard to do is to establish some levels of consistency of the must-dos, like what needs to be in place, and then where there is like local or site-based opportunities to adjust based on their specific construct and needs.
All right, I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do. I will look at the framework to see if I can better understand. Cause, and I don't mean to sound harsh. I just wanna make sure that we're not using words cause they sound good, and that's not what I'm alleging, I'm just. Yeah.
I think you have a right
Not-
to, when you look at our data, it's not showing equitable outcomes consistently, right? So
Right, and I,
when you see that word, it can be, I understand where you're coming from.
okay, I appreciate that. I'll move on to my next question. You had another slide in here that was related to the investments of FTE that have been resulting in more resources available for students, which is always a great thing. One of the things I notice here, though, in the red box, is that because we added 4.0 restorative justice coordinators, it has helped to result in, right, some of the things in the blue box. And this is where I'm kind of not tracking. So we're adding the 4.0 restorative justice coordinators. I don't see anything restorative in the previous slide that we just discussed. The culture and climate work is part of your department and, you know, has an incredible intersection with mental health and well-being, but it's not here. Can you tell me how the 4.0 restorative justice coordinators add to mental health and well-being
Yes.
explicitly?
Yes, so I think that within our high schools, prior to the inclusion of this restorative justice coordinator position, our student services teams were holding that restorative justice work, and we're really the ones coordinating the systems alongside of implementing circles or the professional development, et cetera. And so in our high schools, that was a shared responsibility amongst many people. And this addition allows us to have a more concentrated and consistent entry point and systems orientation, which then allows us to free up those other folks to be more focused on the student aspect of those supports as opposed to the systems aspects of the support.
Okay. All right, just a couple more. So last month in December, we had a behavior education plan update, and there were some connections to culture and climate, which I know is not tonight's topic, but for me, I'm gonna just highlight a couple things that I noted. We talked in that presentation about suspension numbers continuing to be higher than we would like to see. That there continues to be disproportionality, especially for Black and Black students and students who identify as needing individualized education plans and special education. That we were seeing increased feelings of safety. And that there still was a need for mindset work with adults. So when I think about that as the context in some of our schools, and then I go back to this culturally responsive problem solving around mental health and well-being, it quite honestly, it feels like there's a disconnect. And I'm not sure that it seems like the resources that we're spending or the systems we're trying to develop for mental health and well-being is also showing up in culture and climate. And the students who have historically been harmed and marginalized are still being harmed and marginalized. Maybe I'm drawing a conclusion that I shouldn't draw, but that's what it seems like to me. And I guess I'm wondering, do you all have conversations at the department level that is specific about which students across our schools and across our system do we need to be thinking very differently about? Like, what targeted strategies might we need? And And yeah, I know that they're not all the same, but there's this interconnectedness between culture, climate, feelings of safety, mental health, overall well-being. And yeah, I'm just connecting last month to this month.
Yeah, when I think about that question, I'm brought to the slide we had last month that focused on our high impact actions, specifically around students. So a lot of our work and analysis is at a very macro level, looking at what we have available and who's accessing it. I think we have an opportunity that we are taking to take a better look at the students who are being for this example, being suspended multiple times. Who are these students? What have they experienced? What programs are they connected to? What's their level of, how many times have they switched schools? Really just digging in to understand our students who are struggling and their overall experience, layered with the program availability and what students are participating in, and then looking for that gap. I don't know what that's going to tell us, but I do believe that this is an opportunity to both look macro at our overall systems, but really, who are these students we're not serving? What are their faces? What's their experience? And what do we need to be doing differently in order to shape that experience that they're having in our schools?
Okay, so is that something that's actually happening?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm meeting
and
with
do
Brady
you
next
think
week.
that will show up in our next strategic framework around the culture of connectedness and well-being?
I don't know. I think right now we wanna investigate and better understand the data. I suspect that data will help us when we think about our key performance indicators and our strategies, will help guide us into choosing the highest leverage strategies, but I don't know exactly what that will look like yet.
Okay. Well, I have taken enough time. I want to thank you. And I also just want to say that I'm always impressed with the level of universal screening that we do, the investments with our mental health partners, and the ongoing work we do. And I'm going to say this, but it's not meant at anyone personally. We have got to stop treating culture and climate separate from mental health, safety, and well-being. I understand that they're their own bodies of work and you need staff who, can have a certain expertise, but there are deep intersections. And I just think that if we don't find more nuanced ways of looking at our data, getting into empathy interviews and really talking to students and figuring out how to analyze which resources are just not serving students and do something to interrupt that, I feel like we're gonna continue to have the same conversation.
And I don't know if this is helpful at all, but I think that's why we have in the green on the prior slide and the visual, those culture and climate pieces as as underlying in a universal way, mental health, right? Because we are recognizing that it's not about, like Leah said, being a mental health school, for example. That those universal practices are underlying then, or in some ways preventing us from needing to move higher up the tiers with everyone.
Yeah, and I respect that, and I'm also gonna say that I've now been on the board, I'm in my 3.5 year. And this is probably my 3rd update on something related to culture, climate, the behavior education plan, and mental health, safety, and well-being. And we keep saying foundational universal skills are the things that must be strengthened. And I know there's not a magic wand for that when you have a system of 52 schools, but I also feel like we've been saying that. And so as a board member that's getting ready to go into a budget cycle, I guess what I'm thinking about is are there different resources is there something else that we need to be trying if we need to get foundational, universal kind of skills, mindsets, and practices set up
Mhm.
that aren't reflected in our current budget?
Mm.
That's all. It's more of a like pushing us to say,
Yep.
there are some things that I feel like we've known now for a while and we continue to state. But I'm not sure that I see the targeted strategies yet.
I think the one thing that I would say that I don't think we can underscore enough is some of the partnerships and the new partnerships that we're engaging in. I think the BIPOC Mental Health Coalition, for example, is a really important group that is all mental health providers of color, bringing forth other providers of color and starting to look at the Dane County youth assessment data, pulling us together to really think differently about what are the supports and how can they, from all of their organizations, pull together. That's just one example, but I do think that doing an underscore around some of our community partnerships that are starting to come to the table differently to support our students is one of the pieces that I think is promising and really important based on what we alone as a school district have been attempting to do. So I don't want to put too much like weight on that.
Yeah.
They are, but that is just an example of where I think in many of our staff, especially those roles are white and or white female, and so pulling some resources, I think is a huge piece of it. I think the RJ coordinators to underscore the work of the kind of trusting adults connections that they have with students while they're not a direct provider. So I think there's some non-traditional ways that we need to start continuing to think about the supports for our students, and maybe non-traditional is not the right word. On a Monday back from a 2-week break, but you get what I mean, like thinking through other people in other ways outside of kind of the traditional approaches that we've had to move forward with what I'm hoping is improvements and promise for kids. So I just wanted to add one piece.
All right, I thank you for that. Thank you all.
Thank you, Board President Nichols. You started at 5:34 and it is now 5:59. You will hear from Board Member Martha Sharavo. I then saw Board Member Pearson, Board Member Mosner-Feltham, and Board Member Castro.
Thank you, Chair Muldrow. I'm gonna follow maybe a very similar thought process to what President Nichols was talking about, because when we're looking at that slide that has that rainbow on there, it's my first time like really analyzing that. And so the bottom pieces seem structured and then it seems like scatterplotted. So I was trying to understand like why things were where they were. Were they connected to one of the colors? There's a lot going on that slide. And it seemed like it was foundational on the bottom and then just didn't really understand the structure of the things that were above it. It helped as like working through it to go that way, but I guess I also don't really understand the connection in general, just presentationally from the slide that was meant to give us all of the pieces in one space. I was wondering if you could say why is 5 to Thrive brand new? Was it something that we like picked up? How was it modeled? Like, can you explain that a little bit more?
Do you want to take that one?
So 5 to Thrive is separate from the visual that was shared, the slide that we've had lots of questions about and commentary on. 5 to Thrive was a campaign that resulted from the ad hoc committee. It was a wellness committee, and I apologize because it began before my time here in MMSD.
The superintendent's wellness advisory and the student from that is how it generated. Just say there's not enough awareness at our schools about how to access mental health resources or where to access mental health resources. So Megan Fernando and a couple of previous student reps and student senate helped to create this campaign to build awareness about where students access mental health resources at the schools. I didn't want, sorry.
No, I appreciate that. And it also resulted then with us revamping or creating a new website related to mental health and well-being within the district as well.
I was thinking about because I attended the health and wellness committee
Yes,
prior to break.
yes.
And so that was nice to see the discussions at the table, the conversations that were being had. And I was thinking that was I almost expected to see it somewhere in here. Don't think I did. So I know that work is ongoing. And that has a very specific focus. So it's good to see that's there. I think when I'm looking through this and then we were talking about like how to access it, is the 5 to Thrive concepts only on the website? Is there signage in schools? Like, where is all that stuff?
Yes, so you can see signage if you walk or travel through these halls on different boards and in schools. It differs from school to school in terms of how prominently things are displayed. There's QR codes also attached, and again, direct information provided by the student voice work we've done. We're working on, because to the point that was made about stigma also and accessing services, students have told us, okay, this is great to see these posters and so on, and we're still uncomfortable, for example, maybe raising our cell phone if it's out, to scan a QR code in front of people. And so that's been super helpful information to then come back to the materials in the campaign and say, maybe we need to make sure posters get into bathroom stalls or some other way, we're still working through to use the materials, but still in a way that reduces stigma and encourages access.
That's exactly what I was wondering, because
Yeah.
at hospitals, you go there and you see a
Yep.
lot of those kind of supports
Yep.
in those very private spaces
Yes,
for that particular reason.
yes,
And like showing a range of ways to access it via calling, texting, or a website or something to go to. And when I was looking through the different options, like how to get through the resources there, I think the only text option that was there was like for like a crisis thing, but not like I need to reach out for counseling or something like
Mhm.
that. That was a little bit
Mhm.
more on like an initial, I need to reach out to some, like a lighter note, if I might put it that way. But like the first reach out moment, like what does that look like? And where does someone feel that they need to reach out to during that moment? So are those options about where they're gonna become available? Where are those conversations at?
So we continue to distribute the materials to schools and recommend placement, for example, in bathrooms, whether that's happening or not. We're still looking and assessing. One of the things we are working on following up on right now, which was also a student suggestion, was to get the QR code on stickers. So that like when students have health fairs, mental health fairs that are student led, they're working on that for this year also, then stickers can be at tables that students can just grab, for example, to access the website. As far as additional texting options and so on, that hasn't been explored at this point. But that piece about stigma and being able to get to the website is something we're continuing to work on.
Are you gonna be able to get feedback that if schools are not putting them up in the same places, why they're not doing it, and if they might need some sort of more, I don't know how to put it, more signage that's like protected signage? I don't know how else to put that, just because you put stuff up in a public space.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
are you getting that feedback, or something that you're still looking into, like why signage is not consistent across?
Still looking into how to do it consistently. Last year, the focus was to get the materials out. And this year, it's been taking the feedback from students and thinking about more creative ways to, again, through stickers and QR codes and so on, more confidential ways to get the information out. And I appreciate the additional,
Yeah.
what else do we need to do in terms of the materials themselves?
I think the one other thing to just remember too is our school-based psychologists, social workers, counselors, and nurses are that first point of contact. And within our schools, whether it's through morning meeting or advisory or whatever they're doing, they are informing kids about who is available to support them, how to access those supports. In some places, they have Google Forms or appointment structures. Kids use email often to reach out to their counselor or another member of the student services team. So there's also some site-based pieces that are more explicit teaching and reinforcement, so students know where that safe place is and how to access it in a variety of ways.
I'm gonna connect, that's actually also another thing that President Nichols was talking about, is that sometimes community, just different. Culturally, sometimes we just all communicate, reach out to places in very specific ways, because you kind of want, well, sometimes you kind of like, why isn't this one community coming to the table? Well, you might have to go to their table first, like, I can figure out like what that looks like. Are you also getting data back on who we're not seeing, or is there like a specific demographic or like certain schools that are? I don't know how to put that. Who are we not seeing? I guess is it because that's hard to capture in and of itself.
Yeah, and sometimes, I was just gonna say that sometimes it's challenging to
Yeah.
know who you're not getting to. For each of our programs that we have a partnership with, annually and more frequently, but at least annually, we're reviewing program goals. And among those, we're often looking at demographic data to see who we're reaching with various programs. I've been pretty impressed with most of our programs in terms of our reach related to race and ethnicity, and it varies by program, which again gets to the point of the need for the continuum of services. And we also continue to work on making sure we have that data across all programs and so on. So.
Is that something we'll be able to see kind of tied in to this for next year? To see some of that demographic, like where are we at?
I would love to sit in.
I certainly think we can think about, yes, the answer is we'll be able to, I think what we'll be able to articulate is so after we are. Start over. So the Board President Nichols' question around the students we're serving, how we're serving them, and that need to review, for me is really that entry point to understand who we're not serving. So if BHS is there, why are not our kids and families participating in that? And so using that as like our starting place. And so I think after we do that exercise, I'll have a better idea of how and where to pull that sort of complete picture together.
Okay, I'd really like to be able to kind of see that intertwined in here and kind of see like where our base point. There's actually one, like, again, another thing, we got 84% was the prior year of reach of who was reaching this. What did you do differently in order to make that change?
In terms of the mental health literacy presentations, I'm trying to think of a nice way to say it. Really reminding schools and making those reach outs. Please do this. Please let us know. We have a form that schools complete when they complete the presentation, and it also includes feedback. And so we're working on ways to also make the presentation template we provide more useful to schools, although they're free to also edit it as works best. But yeah, just really pushing it systematically,
Good reminder.
taking a
And
look
building the
at-
why also.
Yes,
right?
yes.
The rationale matters.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think there are only two other things I'm gonna pull in here. I like how you guys included some of the partners on there, because I think that's really important. And Cindy, we were talking about some of the very other partnerships that we have that weren't directly part of some of the pieces that were in here. I think that's really important because we're in Madison, we have such a resource of partnerships around here that I'm just to use them and to have them in our schools and available in the community as well is just really valuable. So I appreciate using all all of them specifically here in different places, because I started thinking about Journey and Family Voices and stuff like that. I know a lot of students and families are connected to.
And facets.
One of the last pieces I was gonna go off, Kat, I said, I feel like I was following your mindset, President Nichols, is when we're connecting mental wellness and well-being and stuff to students, I also think of like safety and stuff like that, which just might be in a different conversation or somewhere else. But I also like just seeing adults around, and having them there is part of wellness and being in school and feeling safe. And in different places for very specific purposes. And so this probably, I don't know if this is something that you guys would be able to answer, but our security teams, if someone is unavailable or doesn't show up, what happens? Do we have a subgroup? Do we have resources available? I said, I don't know if this is the right place to ask this one, but I'm just wondering, like, what happens during those times? Or is there, we talked about a lot about having subs for teachers, but what about for security teams?
We don't have.
Like, what happens?
Chair Mulder or Board Member Saravo, of the many staff that we have, not all of them by their handbook, have substitutes. Security assistants are a group that have never had substitutes. It's also important to note that not all of our schools have security assistants.
Sure.
So there have to be systems and structures in place that our students are always going to have their needs met. The school is always going to have a plan
Right.
in place of somebody not being there.
Yeah.
So backups to backups, making sure that there's teams, people are trained, support from district, from the central office, if need be as well. To go and help during crisis management, sometimes for a little bit longer term, but no, as a rule, school security assistants do not have a substitute.
Is there like why?
It's just part of their agreement.
It's a union.
Never have, whether it's cost or having, we don't have a surplus of school security assistants to draw from. So it's just not a substitute pool that we've ever had.
Can we look to create one?
I'm wondering if it's is it something that would be something that would benefit to look into to see if it would be a valuable resource for our schools to have access to?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, maybe we should start by some.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is our hiring for school security assistants? So what is attendance like? I've not heard
Okay.
that this is a concern outside of maybe, one case.
When I visit schools, I take in a lot of things when I'm there, and it was something that was just notable about like when someone's gone. Like you said, there's a lot of people that are playing multiple roles and sometimes being in different places for very specific reasons. For all to make sure that they're where they need to be as students.
And I do understand that. I mean, this discussion we've been having has made me think a lot about universal. And, the idea that behavior isn't linear, every child, every adult shows up differently. And part of being responsive is understanding a student and making sure that if it didn't go well the first time, you can be self-reflective so that next time there's a different outcome, perhaps. That's part of being self-aware. That's part of being culturally responsive. But we've got large schools with a lot going on, many variables that impact that. So it's every adult is important in terms of this conversation. So I also want to make sure that you're not saying this, but we can't be reliant on one person being done either. We have to make sure as a community that we can come through and have this systems in place.
I was resonating a little bit on like when the Follett was presenting at our last too, saying that they have a lot of adults around to make sure that students have trusted adults in the space in order to go to them and start having those conversations, but also the ones that are specifically there for a security team. And sometimes they're placed in very specific, they're just housed in a very specific place that would make a student feel that they are safely accessing a certain part of the school, or that they are just, there's a lot that goes into it. So I just wanted to put this out there because it was something that resonated a lot with me. Okay, sorry, the last thing I just wanted to ask is actually thought that maybe you guys were gonna highlight like the Holtzman Center and stuff while we were here, because there's a lot that goes on there with the type of professions that we have there for mental health. and whatnot, and the students that go there because it's a high to utilize resource for specific reasons, and how does that play into the conversation? There's a lot of important work and there's a lot of students there. Hopefully for reasons that are bringing them back to a better place in order to be with the class, yeah.
I'll start it over to Leah and, so Holtzman IAP services, the program, students are still assigned to their home school and they still participate in their home school. So when the team thinks about resources and supports, it usually starts with their home school and then the additional resources or supports, whether it's Holtzman, whether it's me, whether it's IAE, wherever it is, then the additional resources and what the students need usually follow up. But because every one of those students is assigned to one of the 52 home schools, the supports and the identification and all that start there. No, what else you would add?
With those programs, do you think there's like a different lens, like it wasn't? I just didn't see it identified specifically in here, like is that under it already?
No, it's embedded because everything that is in the data is based on the 52 schools. And so again, those students only attend those programs usually part day. So they're still assigned to whatever their home school is, Lapham, for example. And so the data shows up under their home school. So we don't have like a separate set of data for IIP or a separate set of data for the programs under IIP. The data shows up because the students are still pointed to their home school. Does that make sense?
Yes, if I might say it back, so
Yeah,
we don't
for
have
sure.
specific data for that particular program, or the programs that you mentioned are
It's embedded.
housed within.
Yeah. Sorry,
Okay.
finish your sentence.
I guess, how do you track things when it comes to this kind of?
I think when you look at individual students, you can start to see, because I mean, Holtzman, let's use Holtzman as an example. Holtzman has a roster of who those students are and what additional services maybe Holtzman. The data that we have here is at an aggregate level and it's all based on the 52 schools. So it's rolled into it, but you're not gonna see us separating out by lead or separating out by Holtzman or separating out by GDO 2 or what it is. It's at the aggregate level. When they get into their individual kind of problem solving analysis, they can look at where students are assigned secondary.
I guess I'm wondering if we have, like, is there a way we get to understand like how long some students are part of more of a highly intervention that's not within their homeschool, that's outside of the homeschool? Like, do you track the data around that? Because obviously there's a lot more. So there's a lot that goes into that kind of work.
Mhm.
We want students to be with their class if that's when they're ready for it. When they're part of it. Does that make sense?
I think so, but I think the services for IAP that fall under student services and special education.
Mhm.
That piece of it versus the mental health, I'll let the mental health team chime in if I'm not saying anything accurate.
I think IIP and the
You don't
Holtzman.
have two of those heaters or any kind of heaters. You plug them in the
I'm sorry, Mary, do you mean to be off mute right now? I'm gonna assume the answer is no.
Thank you. So within those programs, we acknowledge and recognize that students are demonstrating an increased level of need that is potentially related to their mental health. And so when we think about that visual and how things, as we sort of matriculated up in the visual, it may be that our students in IIP programs are accessing some of those more intensive interventions in a different way because of their specific needs. So it's still really part of the overall IEP and MTSS problem solving systems, but definitely additional considerations based on the population of students and the needs that they're demonstrating. And we also work directly with IIP staff when there are programmatic needs or larger sort of systems work that is necessary in order to better serve the program. So there is that collaboration there too.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. I know I included a lot in here, so, okay, thank you.
All right. Board Member Saravo, you started at 6 p.m. and it is now 6:21. We have heard from less than half of the board at this point. We've been asking questions for over an hour. And because of that, I'm gonna shift the order, because student representative Claire Lee has to leave at 7, and I am worried that were the other 3 board members to ask their questions, she wouldn't get her question in before leaving this evening. So board, our colleague, student representative Lee, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much. So I have a few questions regarding, so there's a student wellness committee in Student Senate. And last year we also went as the mental health committee. So our focuses have changed a little bit from just being mental health, also along with school safety. And we ran a mental health fair last year, which I know was briefly brought up in this meeting. And we got a lot of feedback as to how the district can improve in terms of mental health. And I was wondering what this year we're trying to do it at all 4 comprehensive high schools. And we were wondering where that feedback would go best to and how that feedback would be implemented. I know it depends on what the feedback will be, but I'm just wondering overall.
I think generally, not sure where to look. We have multiple screens going on here. I think generally, Claire, that getting that back to us on the mental health and well-being team, I know you and I have connected, is the best method for that. For example, the feedback that was part of the mental health summit that you all led in spring related to 5 to Thrive and concerns about stigma related to accessing those materials or the website. That's feedback that we took from that meeting or that summit, and then have discussed amongst our team and strategized about how to address, for example. And so I think just continuing to get that feedback back to us. I hope some of the connections that we've set you up with at some of the high schools are panning out, and we'll continue to communicate, because I know this year you were wanting to have a separate fair at each school as opposed to at each of the 4 comprehensive high schools, as opposed to having the one mental health summit.
Yeah. I have a question picking back off that. So I know we have a lot of student input, but then I'm also curious what you guys as a team think that we can do in addition to the mental health fairs and summits that we are doing to help the cause of mental health all around MMSD.
I think one of the things that stands out to me is what was part of what we were discussing tonight related to stigma and access and feeling safe to connect with supports in schools. And so I think working with our students to really understand points of access and the best points of access, and really centering a peer support type of approach to making those connections is going to be an important collaboration for our team and with our student input.
Okay, I see. And then I just have one last question. So in the slides, one of the goals was to overall improve the mental health and school-related functioning of students for behavioral health. And I was wondering how you guys plan on quantifying that, or if you do plan on quantifying that. And again, like how, if there's any, like if our forms from feedback from the summit, if that would help with quantifying that data.
So I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the slide you're referring to was actually specific to our behavioral health in schools program, which is in our elementary and middle schools. And I shared just a snippet of some of the data we collect around that. And I think what I shared relates to a student satisfaction survey that is given at the end of services. So that was specific to that program, and there are many ways across the different programs that we take a look at the impact from student satisfaction surveys to therapist ratings of achieving therapeutic goals to parent and teacher satisfaction surveys and so.
Okay, so that only applies to middle school and elementary school.
That particular example did.
Okay.
But our other programs all have various goals that will reflect, improvement in functioning for students and are measured in various ways.
Okay, I see. I understand. Thank you so much.
Great question. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Board Representative Lee. We will now hear from Board Member Peterson.
Thank you. So I have a lot of questions, but I'll try to pare them down. Because I think my board colleagues so far have raised some of, not necessarily concerns per se, but I'm still trying to understand as well. And it's been somewhat difficult. So thank you, Board President Nichols, for really highlighting like the need of the connection between all these different pieces and that they don't live in a vacuum. And so, and I think I've said this before multiple over the years, it's like, where are the connection between the pieces that we're talking? Like we can talk tonight about mental health, but how are we kind of putting in all these pieces within this, including like belonging and stuff, especially because last year we got a presentation that had those pieces in there, and whatnot. So one of the things that, as we all know, especially we probably saw in the news of like Tularian losing their resources, and we're probably, that's why, when you said the federal government is giving, I was like, especially because a lot of organizations, a lot of the partners that we are partnering with are losing resources left and right. And so when we are talking about the reliance on partners, and generally I'm a big supporter of like partnerships. But as we know, again, they're losing resources. What does that look like for us in terms of still wanting to have a more robust supports for our students and then also for our staff? How does that fit into us being sustainable in the growth that we want to see, and not so much reliance on our partners if that is where the direction is going, because that is definitely what it seems that we're going.
Want me to start?
Sure.
Okay, so I would say we have been very, very thoughtful, and I give Dr. Getchow, our former director, a lot of credit here, in how we begin or pilot programs, how we think about sustainability and scaling, overall. And the biggest challenge for our team in doing that thoughtfully is the inconsistency in which our mental health is funded at a state level. And I say that just in the sense of it's never 100% clear when we're budgeting how much we're going to get. And the timing by which we are informed of what we get is a challenge. With that said, with those dollars, we really feel very strongly that we have incredibly sustainable funding models built for each of those partnerships. And a concrete reliance on local funds in order to maintain the things that that we see as our foundation. We definitely have to be considerate and aware of all of those impacts, but at this point, we feel confident that we have the resources to continue our programming as is and hopefully make gradual expansions. But our biggest point of advocacy related to that is the funding formulas and the timing of when that information is provided to our team.
Okay, I mean, that ties into like my question around that too, is just like, to what investments are needed as a body that is determining the budget, what other support is needed in terms of editorially. And one thing that I notice is like, we have on here the challenges and the successes, but there's not really much to tell us like exactly like, hey, we need, one psych person. And this was a question that I was asking off to the side of like, even have every school has access to a psych, like a psych staff. But does every school have its own psych person? No. And so when we are thinking about the expansion and whatnot, like I would expect that we would come forth tonight and say, this is all the great data that we have. This is how we're thinking about conceptually of moving forward. We need like 20 new people. Because I think the more that we can put that out there, the more I think it's important for us then to hold our state accountable, saying, hey, we're making this a priority. These are the resources that we need. It's like, yes, conceptually, theoretically, yes, these are the resources that we need based off of what we're seeing, but this is exactly what we need to make this happen. And so I would like to see that coming forward in the future, just because I think we have to be more clear and direct of our needs and not necessarily vague and with like just the numbers. But with that, I'm thinking too, just about the trends. What trends are we kind of seeing based off of what we know to be true right now with the screenings and the different programs? Are we seeing, let me go back. So when I'm talking, I talk with a lot of high schoolers a lot. And high schoolers, and I think I mentioned this in our climate and culture, like high schoolers are feeling very kind of like disconnected. There's a lot going on for them. The world right now is not in a great place, and there's a lot of anxiety and fears and whatnot, right? So how are we kind of analyzing of like, where are we seeing the trends? Are we seeing it, students have a lot of anxiety around like being unhoused? Are students having a lot of anxiety about, the different federal things that are happening? And so just to kind of understand like where students are at so that we are making actual decisions around that, and not just only trying to have the access, but then we're actually making decisions based off that. So that's one question, if we're seeing any trends from the data that we have currently.
For sure, I can speak to the Dane County Youth Assessment and the last round of that, 2024, I believe, was like the most representative sample in terms of recent history and in terms of MMSD. And so we rely on that data pretty heavily. I'm sorry that Board Representative Lee had to leave because we brought that data to that mental health summit last spring. And the students kind of said, oh, it's accurate. And within that, you see that a third of students, for example, are experiencing symptoms of anxiety, as you mentioned. And then when it's drilled down into reasons for the anxiety, certainly, some of the things you mentioned were endorsed, but one of the things that was very interesting to us that the students affirmed or confirmed at the mental health summit was that a lot of the top reasons for anxiety seem to focus around school-related things. So school performance, school demands, and those are things, it was encouraging to us in the sense of those are things that potentially we might have some influence over. And so those are some trends. You know, there's a number we could certainly talk about, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all pertinent to how we're kind of making decisions, especially for us as we are thinking about budget and policy and things like that as well. The next question I have is just, like, I know we want to expand some of the programs, but when I'm looking at the numbers, I mean, it's less than 1% of our student body. And then also too, I know that some of the programs that we have are also accessible by staff. And I don't see any numbers just of what, like, adults that are assessing, like, having access to it. And I think even when we say students and families, like, what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
Students, we all know, young people don't live in a vacuum. They're at our schools. But a lot of times a student may have access to the resource, but sometimes the parent or the family or the cousin or who else might need that support that might be in the household. And so it would be interesting to see, like, what those numbers look like. So we're talking about just wellness in the sense of a student, especially around mental health. We're not kind of like focusing in on, like, the family and the wellness of the family, or the caregiver, and even the staff around them. I think that's something that is important. And it's just, do we expect to see like a higher number maybe this coming year in terms of, right now it's less than 1%. So, like, not to say, like, to board members' rivals, like, you know, point of like the baselines. Some of the data is data from last year, and we only increased it by like one person being served. And so there's not really a difference. And then just coupled with that, are we seeing the same grouping of students and people who are accessing our resources last year or in 2024, the same students who are receiving or people accessing it in 2025? So is there a continuum? And then that's a different question too, of like, if someone is continuously getting these resources for us, then what does that actually mean of how we can support the student more holistically? So I know it's a lot compounded question, but.
Go for it.
There's a lot
Trying to-
in there. And I think if you're referring to behavioral health in schools with the 1%, certainly that's one program of intensive therapeutic services.
No, I'm just saying, like, 1%, if I think our student body of 25 plus thousand students.
Right.
And then we're only serving 100 students. To me, that, I mean.
In that program, right.
In that program.
Right. And so, again, individual therapeutic services, consider it one of our most intensive programs, if not the most intensive in terms of therapy, school-based therapy, along with our school-based health centers. I think also, you know, mental health services are complex in the sense that, yes, numbers of students reached are important, and that's not the only metric. It's also, you know, like you said, overlapping services, how many billable hours or how many sessions happen. There's lots of ways we evaluate the health of our programs. And so when we're thinking about expansion, we're looking at things like, what number of groups were filled for FACE, for example, in the prior year? We actually reduced that number in terms of our contract this last year because we didn't fill all the groups. And there are reasons for that include things like school capacity. Like you mentioned, do parents want students in particular groups? Does the group appeal to the student, there's so many variables and factors that it's not only about expansion. It's about how we expand and doing it very thoughtfully and mindfully in a measured way. And those are certainly conversations we can have and continue to have, and we're doing that within our team always. That's why, you know, yes, many schools want to have BHS, want to have behavioral health in schools, and we know for it to be successful, I really appreciate what you said about investment in the staff in addition to the partnerships, because the capacity matters. The staff are also highly skilled in mental health interventions and delivering interventions. The more capacity they have, the more professional development we can provide them in other programs, which we've been doing, and are able to pilot additional programs. So all the mental health services are not provided only through our partners. Although our partnerships are amazing and wonderful. So I think that dual approach of making sure we're staffing with our mental health professionals in addition to supporting our partnerships is really important.
Okay, thank you for answering that. I'll just ask one other question, and it's, I have lots of questions, but I'm trying to couple them together. To the point of like school capacity and staff capacity. When we're asking our educators and, you know, our staff to provide these supports more holistically. And you mentioning that, you know, it's about a capacity thing. It's about, you know, having the training and feeling that, you know, myself as an educator with these students, how can I, you know, do the best job possible in connecting them and giving them the resources that they need. I think about just capacity in conjunction with all the other things that are competing and that we're asking people to do. And so I guess for us, like, we kind of know some of the things that, to the point earlier, kind of know over years. I mean, I grew up in MMSD. I went to all the schools. Here I am. You kind of know decades of what is necessary, needed. And I would like to see us move in more urgency about the needs that we need. And finding ways to move in a more urgent way. Because our staff, our students deserve that. And we as a society become better when we do that. So with that, how are we thinking about just an expansion in terms of like school implementation? And what resources are necessary for that expansion, or trying to get more students involved around the supports is actually needed. And maybe we can't answer that now, but it would be great to hear at least thoughts around that. So.
Vice President Pearson, Chair Mulder, Vice President Pearson, we're just getting into our allocation and revenue projections for next year. So that'll be the source of conversations moving forward. I have sat here in my position and heard a number of different priorities. We simply are not going to be able to fund every priority that we have. So we are going to have to take a really thorough look at everything on the table, determine through working with the board and the community and our staff, you know, where those resources are going to be dedicated.
I don't know if anyone wants to say hi. I would just add one little piece to that. I do think with my analytical brain, as a person who thinks about things analytically, like being able to analyze how our actual programs are being implemented, to understand if they're working, to know if it's even necessary. Some might be more necessary than others. I think it's important for us to know if we're gonna be making those decisions. And right now, like if I take in what has been presented, I don't know. I don't remember today, I had to make that decision of like the competing priorities and what investments we need to make. I couldn't make that decision just because I don't know what the analysis is around, you know, the mental health, like based off the presentation today. And so my hope is that in the future that we have more of that analytical piece. And I actually really like when schools come in and talk about what they're actually doing. And it would be very interesting to see what some schools are doing directly and how they're utilizing some of these programs. And even the partners coming in and talking about that. So I think, you know, even understanding maybe even some of the barriers that people are having. I think hearing directly from the actual school sometime is very useful for us, especially if we're making those decisions as we're thinking about what is important and what we need to invest in. So I'll leave that. Thank you.
All right, we are at Board Member Mosner Southam, Board Member Pearson. You started at 6:29. It is now 6:47.
Thanks. Thank you for your presentation. My first question actually is for Madam President Nichols. When you said, you were talking about that green bottom and you were saying like, we know that there are these like foundational spots in that universal stuff where we support universal. Were you talking about for students or for adults or for both?
I was referencing that oftentimes when we've had updates over the years related to any of the kind of foundational pieces, what I've heard is that we're still working really hard on still establishing the foundational universal practices across our system.
For adults and students.
For adults and students, just getting those systems in place. Now, a couple of years ago, I was pushing again on this idea of like the foundational, like we've been working on this for a while. And the team was, you know, really good about saying, hey, you know, after COVID, there was a lot of rebuilding to do. And so there was a need to get back to strengthening the foundational and universal practices. And I'm not saying that that would go away in just a matter of one school year. It just seems like that work is always ongoing. And so while we have climate and culture coaches and student services teams and everybody's doing their things to build foundational universal practices, systems out at schools, we still have groups of students who need more. And so how do we get better about, and I'm not saying we're not doing both or all of those things, it's just, yeah. So I think that was where my head was at.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
want to make sure I totally understood you because I care about what you think, but also because you had said like, okay, like if we need to work on this foundation, what is that going to be? And I wanted to make sure I totally understood you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is going to be about bridging student services and instruction. Okay. 1,497 students were screened with the REST screener, and 650 of them were flagged to be interviewed. That's like a lot. This is not bridging instructional, this is just a transition, sorry. Can you talk about that? Like, that's a lot of students to flag from a screen. What are you understanding about that? What did you notice about that? Is it a lot, or am I just not aware of sort of like what the expectation for flags are?
Yeah, it's a lot, and that's part of, because all of those students that are flagged
I'm
with.
sorry, Jesse, would you mind putting up slide 12 where that information was? Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, thanks.
because all of those students that are flagged with concerns then receive individual interviews, that is where the staff capacity and so on becomes very important, right? And not all of those students then who are interviewed are determined to need additional support. And so we continuously work with Journey Mental Health Center. We work with our UW-Madison School Psychology partners in the research that they do, continuously working on refining screening processes and how to get them as accurate as possible. And the benefit of this approach is that many students have now met one-to-one with a student services staff member in their school. And now it's a familiar face and a relationship starts to be built and so on. And so it's both things. It's absolutely a lot, and it's a lot of work. And there's a lot of benefit and a lot of payoff for it as well. And we're continuously working to try and refine it.
Do you have any insights about, given that such a high percentage of students were screened flagged for that, and it's about stress and trauma and resilience in the face of it. And I don't pretend to know a ton about this particular screener. Do you have any insights about why or what are these things that are flagging for people? I know that there are always students who have stress and trauma sort of outside of what is expected or considered normative or whatever. But is there something that you can say about general stress and trauma in our schools that is causing like almost half of the students who are screened to flag?
There's different criteria across screeners for when something is considered challenging enough to warrant further follow-up. And I think what we've talked about in terms of, the high levels of symptoms of anxiety, even symptoms of depression in the Dane County Youth Assessment, 25% of our students have some symptoms of depression. So, sorting through whether it's manageable without additional intervention is a job, right? And then which symptoms rise to the level of needing what level of intensity of support is also part of.
And now to connect with our instructional model and this sort of thing, do we have any insights about when or how elements of our instructional model are creating mental health concerns for students or exacerbating mental health concerns for students? Do we have any, maybe I should turn. See, I'm not, right, like, just like President Nichols said, safety, mental health, wellness, discipline, all connected, also all connected. So I'm curious if we know from all the amazing work that you've been doing, where there are places where we can make shifts or put energy into understanding where our model may be contributing to this that we can change. Do we have any insights about that you could share?
I personally think that we need to continue our student voice work to get that detail below the surface of what our surveys and our screeners and so on take us to in terms of those connections. But I'd also like to yield to others who work more in the instructional world. That's my personal, I think when we do that voice work, gosh, we get such great insights about those kinds of details.
I think last year in March, when we had our student representative present, she spoke concretely about a few things that students expressed when she was doing her interviews. A lot related to the stress of competing demands with academics, with sports, with family, and just the demands on them overall for time. I think also challenges related to just quantity and time management, those pieces, a strong need to feel efficacious academically and putting a lot of pressure on themselves to perform. And I think just overall, just that overall sort of like life management and the demands in schools that we put on kids overall is really what stood out to me.
I'd just add one thing that seems to be a trend is connection and relationships. So I think the relationship or lack of a student has with a teacher sometimes can cause the stress and or the anxiety. I think the connection to the learning engagement, I think we see a lot of engagement or lack of engagement that also tends to be a trend that we often from students and also the system. So those I would just add those two pieces.
Sure, I'm thinking about, thinking about things students said to me. Great, I hope that as we move into our next segment and continue to move forward in our MMSD Excellence Together work, that as we're thinking about future ready student experiences, we're thinking about what we know from student voice work and from former board representative Fernando's work, as well as the stuff that we've said here. It's my belief that we should experiment with our instructional models and should try and innovate change. And so I'll look forward to seeing how we can do that with a mind toward helping students manage this stuff. Okay. So imagine there's a student who has a serious mental health concern and they are not available for learning for some period of time, 3 months, 6 months. That's a lot of academic learning that is missed. Can you talk about what happens when a student has successfully used the support that we have for them and support we've connected them to, and is then able to re-engage in school, but might have missed a whole semester of class or even a whole 6 weeks of a class? Like what are the options for a student to come back to their learning after having missed academic stuff? And I'm looking at you because you presented, but if the answer comes from elsewhere, that's totally.
Yeah, so we actually have re-engagement guidance and tools for our schools to use to support that transition back. In addition, when a student is out, we either officially maintain the obligation to provide their education, or we at the very least maintain a very close clinical connection with those providers. So in general, we are planning we're planning for the students' return the minute they go out, and really thinking critically about what that whole picture looks like, and being very thoughtful about what that process for return looks like, particularly if a student was struggling previously and some of their school struggles led to their potential hospitalization. What are the things that we need to be problem solving for, mitigating, addressing in advance? I think this is an area where we continue to expand our work and our reach, and the DPI recently came out with additional guidance in a similar vein. So we do really have strong, we call it our cross systems work, and processes, processes connected with our Office of School Safety and our social work team.
My last question is about students who transfer into MMSD schools and maybe missed that 6th grade universal screener or missed that 10th grade universal screener. Is there a standard practice for when a student comes into MMSD for getting them screened?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I think it's a good question and something we can talk about.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, groovy. I wanted to flag that I also noticed that the RJ coordinators were listed in that red box and found that to be sort of like a surprising thing. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I noticed that change too. And then my actual last question is sort of so last month we approved a data sharing agreement with La Follette School of Public Affairs to study how we might approach a policy for cell phones in schools. And I'm remembering what former board representative Fernando said about how students actually are really using their phone as a coping strategy. And so I'm hoping I'm hoping to see that whatever comes out of our project with La Follette is thinking about that as well.
Yeah, we actually had a meeting today and part of that came up, because I agree with you. I feel very strongly in making sure that we're not taking away social supports that our kids need. And instead we are teaching and training and supporting in a holistic way that can meet their needs and follow the expectations.
Neat. And then the last thing, 28.9 FTE increase from 21-22 till today is incredible. I think that everyone who has been a part of approving those budgets can be really proud of that. And I think that when I talk to student services staff, or when my own child needs support from student services, I really feel like that increase is palpable. And you should be really proud of that. So that's it for me. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Board Member Mosmer Thotham. You started at 6:48. It is now 7:02, and we will hear from Board Member Castro. I'm gonna add myself to the stack, and then we'll start the second round of questions with Board Member Vandermeulen.
Thank you. Got a couple of questions. So the first one is, do we have current student and caseload ratios for our school psychs, counselors, and social workers?
Yes, we do. So we operate using the national recommendations for each role as sort of our benchmark. And our psychologists district-wide, we actually are have achieved that ratio. That does not mean that that has been achieved in every school. Some schools are allocated more psychologists than what the formula would provide. This is a larger conversation around sort of our beliefs related to staffing and staffing over that formulaic or that ratio in order to have folks full-time in school. So in general, though, we are at and have met that 1 to 750 ratio for our school psychologists.
Okay.
Our school social workers, that recommended ratio is 1 to 250. And we are not there yet. We are there in some schools, but in general, we have a ways to go in order to be at ratio for social work. I am not able to explicitly, as much as I want to be able to, counselors. I don't know, Cindy, if you could elaborate on where we're at there.
Yeah, I would say counselors are similar. I think in most places we're close to a 1 to 250. 250 is national ratio, and you might recall a couple of years ago, the education invested in more counselors at middle school because we used to only have one counselor per middle school. We have middle school, so we are pretty close to that 1 to 250 ratio. We have a few schools that have less than 250, and we have schools that have over 250. And just a reminder for counselors, we don't in MMSD have counselors at elementary, so I'm speaking 612 over counselors.
And I misspoke and said psych was 1 to 750. It's actually 1 to 500. So just want to make sure that that's on the record.
Thank you. Could we please get that in writing in a weekly update? I think that'll be very helpful as we go into our next budget cycle and talk about allocations and stuff like that. Okay, so my next comment is I've heard from a few social workers that our mental health partner providers require some level of billing, and that can be a hurdle for our students who might be undocumented. I'm wondering if we can work with our partners to kind of provide some interference or just cover that billing process for those students, or if they can go through some kind of reform on that process on their end. I know that UW Health does offer financial assistance, but that's no guarantee, and that process can be pretty convoluted to go through. So that's that comment. My next question is on one of the slides. So classroom practices and instructional practices were listed as that. I'm wondering if you can talk more about what those classroom practices are and if they are a part of like the formal coaching process and evaluation processes that our educators go through.
I would say that the conceptually, yes, that's part of is part of the work that we do with our educators and is part of their overall performance metrics. And more specifically, we're talking about things like welcoming new members to the community, establishing shared agreements, celebrations tied to identity, explicitly teaching and practicing community agreements aligned to school-wide agreements, those sort of concepts. And so in general, what we're looking for in a school system is really those structures, scaffolds, and expectations related to these approaches. And then also our team's work in enhancing the effectiveness and the overall efficacy of the work that is happening in schools and ensuring consistent implementation and representation overall in the approach.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. How one sees themselves as a learner has a big impact on their self-esteem in a classroom setting and therefore their mental health. So I hope that that is part of our formal evaluations for like educator effectiveness or the educator coaching cycles that folks go through. Okay, and then my last question is the new proposed RJ staff, are those for high school or for middle school? Have we thought about middle school RJ coordinators?
So we added several years back, we added those 4 RJ coordinators to our high schools. We're not necessarily at this moment making a recommendation to add more. But instead really looking at our overall systems of support around restorative justice in general in schools. At middle schools, we partner with the YWCA in several schools to build those restorative systems and have district-wide support related to restorative justice initiatives in school. And so at this point, we're not recommending or asking for an increase there. And instead, we're really thinking about how we're leveraging the culture and climate coaches to more deeply engage in that restorative work.
Okay. I think adding considering some kind of system for middle schools on our end would be beneficial. But okay, I'm sure that we will be talking about this more as we talk about the future cell phone policy and how social media can impact mental health. And finally, when I requested those specific ratio numbers, wondering, just asking if you can add nurses to that as well.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sorry I did not speak to that. I'll just say that that in general, with our health services, the ratio of 1 to 750 is important to consider, and our staffing really is dependent upon student medical needs. And in certain environments, we'll have more staffing based on specific students. But ultimately, we can confidently say that we can staff our health offices safely and effectively on a day-to-day basis with what we have, and it is under the ratio similarly. So yes, we can.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Board Member Castro, for your questions. Board Member Vandermeulen, your second.
Oh, I thought you were going, okay.
You know, I might not have any at this rate.
No problem. All right, my 2 questions is, could we get a weekly update about, this is for admin. We get a weekly update about adding substitutes for the security assistance and behavioral assistance and whether that's feasible and how that is done. And can we please possibly look into whether or not the board wants to do it as a budget amendment on whether or not to create a subsystem? I know there are certain schools that don't.
I'm curious about the language of amendment, given where we're at in the budgeting process going into next year.
But board, good point. It's more of the topic for discussion.
Okay,
I would like it to be discussed.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding you.
Yes,
So I think what you're saying is, are you talking about our current budget, amending the budget that we have right?
no,
Okay, you're talking about
future,
planning for our future budget.
yes,
Which doesn't necessarily have to be an amendment just yet.
correct.
Okay,
I'm sorry I was unclear.
no. I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
No, and that's 100%, I was not clear. Additionally, I know we don't do counselors in elementary. I don't quite understand why, but that is not an issue. What I do worry about with the whole Take 5 and the QR codes, I think we have to go low tech, not high tech on the whole QR codes, because if we're already going to restrict cell phone use and we don't want people taping anyone in the bathroom anyway, I'd rather not have them on a bathroom stall where kids can then use it inappropriately, because hate to tell you, 13-year-olds are 13-year-olds. They'll probably tape themselves, not other people. At least I know I would have when I was 13.
That is very much on our radar as we're having conversations around the cell phone policy, is when and where students do need to access it for information, et cetera.
Because I don't want to look, as someone who's been open on her mental health, when I had a panic attack in middle and high school, I hid in the bathroom. I don't want to completely lose the ability to contact in case someone does need privacy, because frankly, it served me very well. And I don't want to take that from any student. That's all I have, Chair.
Thank you. I do have a couple quick questions. The more I'm oriented to school shootings, the more I become aware that school shootings are often very violent, very public suicides. Talk to us about how the average age of a school shooter is 17 years old, and the vast majority of school shooters go to the school. And so when we talk about like locking doors and keeping kids out, it's not really in alignment with what school shootings actually look like. And we know this because last year, this community experienced 2 school shootings in a suburb and in a nearby private school. Talk to me about warning signs that our educators should be aware of in terms of being able to connect with families and get kids the support they need if they are demonstrating that they have a violent inclination towards their other students, or that they're severely depressed.
I'll start and then I'll have Tracy take it. So the unfortunate reality that we are navigating is that there is access to weapons and weapons come to school. And so it's not unfortunately an if or when, it's an if, if not and when, anyway. And so recognizing that there's a lot that we can and need to do just systemically within our organization. And so we can lock every door, we can put glass protectors, we can have all of the fanciest technology and cameras, and ultimately human action is really what keeps our school safe. And so it's the relationships we build, it's the connections we make, it's the attentiveness that we provide to what students are experiencing. So I'll let Tracy talk about some of those particular sort of signs. The thing that I want to reinforce as it relates to our overall system is that we have very, very strong threat assessment processes and protocols. You'll hear the concept of leakage, and we're very cognizant of that concept and the importance of intervening and taking all threats very seriously. Gina Agulia, who is one of the members of our Office of School Safety, could speak a little bit more broadly to the overall threat assessment system. But I think it's important for the board to know that not only are we using things like universal screening, but when we hear something, it is an immediate cause for assessment and intervention. But Tracy can speak a bit more to how that might show up and how mental health literacy professional development is supporting our educators to see and understand when there might be something addressed.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning screening and also mentioning mental health literacy, because we do need to empower all staff to be able to act on signs. Because it's pretty rare that we have a situation with a shooter or school violence where there hasn't been, like Leah said, some kind of leakage or indication. One point I do want to make is that when we assess suicide risk, that doesn't, of course, always mean that there is going to be intent to harm others. However, when there's intent to harm others expressed, we are always very mindful of the possibility of suicidal intent as well. And so we're increasingly in our trainings talking about that overlap and the need to sometimes conduct both kinds of risk assessments. So I appreciate you raising that connection. As far as warning signs, I mentioned related to, say, suicidal ideation, and this is part of the mental health literacy presentations. Changes in behavior are huge, right? Whether it's in the direction of sleeping more, sleeping less, socializing more, socializing less, really doesn't matter, although all kids sometimes be a big one. It's about the change. The change is what's big. And then when it comes to, say, suicidal ideation, one of the number one indicators seems to be feelings of hopelessness. So whether that's expressed verbally or in other ways, really, if that's being heard, attending to that, like there doesn't seem to be a way out and not looking toward the future at all and expressing those hopeless feelings. And then similarly related to violence, statements or other indications of, after this point, it's not going to matter anymore. And sometimes they seem vague, but retrospectively, at least, we often can make those connections. And so we need to be doing that prospectively and proactively as well. And then the other piece I'd like to address too, like Leah mentioned, it's those adult actions. The relationships are huge and those connections are huge as we're talking about belonging in our strategic framework. I think that's going to continue to play a big role here, but also our safety planning. So whether that's in response to suicide risk assessment or in response to violence risk assessment, one of the things that we know interrupts violent acts, whether they're towards self or others, the most effectively is restricting access to means. So when someone expresses a plan and they identify a means, often they'll stick with that means in terms of their plan. But locking up medications, restricting access to firearms in terms of locking them, storing ammunition separately from the firearm and so on. We are now, the Be Smart website has been part of the Office of School Safety website and is now part of what we include in suicide risk assessment and safety planning trainings explicitly with our staff, that it is not off limits. In fact, it's encouraged to be talking with parents, guardians, caregivers, families about restricting access to means and locking up firearms or whatever the indicated weapon is. So those are some thoughts. There's
95% of school shooters have access to the gun in their home. We know that from the shootings that happened here. The difference between those shootings was the two students' access to weapons in terms of their ability to harm others. But what we also know is those students were incredibly well oriented to the safety plans at their school. And they picked specific times and locations within the school to enact that to undermine the safety strategy of the adults. And so I think that's something we need to be mindful of and take into consideration. And I think it's a real conversation between us and families in terms of young people's ability to access a weapon. And it's something I'm glad to hear is on our radar as we talk about student mental health. I think the culture of school shootings has shifted tremendously over the years, and it's something we need to be aware of in terms of online influence related to school shootings right now, and some of the white supremacist methods that our students are experiencing, which stands out in both of the shootings that happened locally, right? Is both of those students were part of the same online community that was really promoting anti-immigrant, anti-people of color, anti-woman, anti-LGBTQ rhetoric. The last thing I want to speak to is kind of universal mental health days and the work that we've done to destigmatize mental health in the past for both students and staff. My hope is that we start looking at a new iteration of that same kind of work. I think we need to normalize mental health. I greatly appreciate the folks who have been vulnerable in speaking to their own mental health and their own needs for support. I hope that we have consistent and effective support and that we continue to invest in this work. And I appreciate the progress that we have made as a body. The last question I'm going to ask is a yes or no question. Are you able to give us a breakdown of the demographics of students who are receiving mental health support from the district right now? You gave us one demographic and it was specific to income. And so saying the vast majority of these students are on Badger Care, I understand that when we talk about low income, we often associate it with people of color. However, the vast majority of people who are receiving Badger Care in the state of Wisconsin are white. And I want to know if that's the vast majority of people who are receiving these services, or if we have a really diverse population of young people who are accessing the support. This is a yes or no question, and I'm hoping that you can provide us the data in a weekly update.
The data exist. I think it depends on the program. I just want to be careful of not promising something. So I think the data exists depending on the program. And we are looking at that on an ongoing basis. The insurance aspects of the low income pieces are connected to just those access pieces, but the data exists.
Okay, I greatly appreciate it, and I would love to see that data, and I would also love to see that data complemented with data about the providers themselves and their demographics, just so we have a real clear analysis of like, do the folks working in student services reflect our student population? Do the partners we're working with reflect the population of students we serve? And if not, how do we strive to get there? And I think you spoke to that a little bit, so I greatly appreciate that. That's it for my questions. There any other questions from board members? I think you gotta let us know now.
It's not a question.
Yes.
We talk about it's the adult actions that are creating safety, but it's also the young people's actions as well. And I know Representative Lee is not here, but when I think about like referrals I've made over my career to student services, a not insignificant portion of them are students who say, hey, Ms. Feltham, I'm worried about my friend. And I think that speaks to, not that there's no stigma, but I think it speaks to our normalization of these needs. And it is good. Just that comment.
We've actually had peers reach out like via Let's Talk saying, so there's also some other avenues utilize, but adult action, but really human action is ultimately important.
I want to stay honest and let folks know that I started at 7:13 and I ended at 7:23, and then board Mr. Feltham took about a minute there. We're going to move on to our second subject. Thank you all so much. This was a tremendously important conversation. All right. We are gonna move on to.
I'll look, I'll see.
What are we moving here?
I'm not sure.
To a on our strategic framework.
All right.
All right, thank you, Dr. Esser and Dr. Chip.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
We are on to our second topic of the evening. A reminder, we had an update, the Board of Education around MMSD excellence together back in November at a retreat. And at that time, we talked about our timeline of when we need to have the majority of our plan completed, and the board had requested that you get one more insight into our plan before it is unveiled to our community. So tonight is giving the board an update on our progress to date, where we are in terms of the many iterations that we've gone through since the last time we presented to you, and where we are in terms of close to final components. So with that, I'm gonna walk through some slides and then at the end, turn it back over to Chair Muldrow for any comments and or discussion. I do want to start with this slide as a reminder that we intentionally decided to name the plan MMSD Excellence Together to convey that this plan is about all of us, our students, our staff, families, and our community. The concept of ensuring that we are leading with and uplifting excellence more than just a benchmark, but really our unapologetic approach to ensure that we create the highest standards for our students and we actually move to excellence for every one of our students. And the word together also really intentional because this coming off of the conversation we just had around partnerships and community as part of the work. We cannot do this work alone. Wanted to also unapologetically say that we need our entire community to come together with us to ensure that we are able to uplift excellence for our students, our staff, our families, and our community. So we were very thoughtful about the words that this plan is named. Next slide, Jesse. And this you have seen many times before, but I just wanted to remind us around kind of the structure of the plan and kind of where the approval process and the ownership of the plan lies. So as you can see, the Board of Education, as you know, you vision, the mission, objectives, and the guiding commitments this past summer. Summer seems like a long time ago as we're in the middle of winter. It was approved in June and in August. And that is really the main components of what the Board of Education is responsible for. And then what you see below that dotted line, how we're structuring the main of the plan, our focus areas, our strategies, and our KPIs. And we are right on track. We are in January of 2026, and we'll be able to share our progress to date around those components. Next slide, Jesse. Thank you. And why a strategic plan matters. I wanted to make sure that we grounded in this slide and talked about the importance of the strategic plan. It is very high level. We've said that before. You aren't going to see the details of tactics and action planning, but it creates a clear direction for the entire community to really have us focus on where we're trying to go with student outcomes and student progress. It's helping us stay focused on the what and the why and really not into the day-to-day details that our schools are in, but at this level, really focused on that high-level approach, keeps us focused on where we need to make decisions around allocation, around resources. The conversation that we just had before and what Dr. Gothard mentioned, there's a lot of important things. There's a lot of priorities. Our new strategic plan is really going to help us hopefully align and streamline where we are making those decisions and how thinking through our budget and our allocation.
Cindy, are we going to later get a lower level in like a weekly update, or is this just the highest level? I'm just asking for my knowledge.
Yeah, for right now, it'll be at this high level, because that's about all that is completed at this point.
I appreciate that. I apologize for interrupting Chair.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the having a strategic plan also creates shared accountability. It's transparent, it allows everybody to know what we are focused on and creating accountability with each other. And then allowing us to support and empower our staff so that they can then deliver on the commitments that we are making to our entire community. It is a commitment to our community when we unveil this plan. It is telling our community what we are going to do and how we. It really helps the board also be able to stay focused on the high level planning. Next slide, please, Jesse. This is a visual of what we've talked about before. You saw it before in kind of an airplane mode, but it really shows that we, as a strategic plan, as I just mentioned, and as board member Van der Meulen asked, the plan is high level. The plan is not going to get into the level of details of our SIP and our CODIP. Our SIPs and our CODIPs will be driven by the plan, but the plan will stay at this foundational level of the why. It will have the what, and it will get into our strategies of how and our KPIs of how's it going along the way. Remember those progress monitoring along the way of checking to see how we're doing. And then the level of detail of action planning will happen in the SIP and the. All right, so our plan overview, the play part that y'all have been waiting for. All right, I should manage expectations. Don't get too excited. So the plan is really helping us also build on our previous plan. Like I want to name that, and you'll see when you see the final kind of written text, we tried to honor the plan that was before that we just called the strategic framework. It was really unapologetic with a focus on Black excellence, with a focus on goal 3 that was centering our students that identify as African American. So we want to keep the sense that that plan is sunsetting, and the continuation of the work that was started through that plan will carry through where that work was having progress and where that work was having success. So not everything that previous plan had will always carry through, but we want to be able to carry through and honor the work that has been having success or that is midway through. So you will see some of the components of our previous plan. It also will have us show the community voice. We feel really good about the way that we created this plan and how the community and all of the voices that came together, and I'll highlight that in a few slides. So the plan overview, Jesse, next slide, is something that you are all very familiar with. This, while we've been using this new vision and the board adopted it in June, this vision is really the vision for this new plan that will be set for 26 through 2031 for the next 5 years. Similarly, the next slide, which is our mission of how we are going to accomplish that vision, is grounding this new plan. Our guiding commitments, next slide, also, while we've been kind of introducing these in presentations and talking through these in other spaces, our commitments are going to come to life as we socialize and as we actualize our new plan. Next slide. And these performance objectives that you have seen before that the Board of Education spent a great deal of time creating and also approving are going to be how we are measuring the health and wellness of the system over the next 5 years. A reminder that these performance objectives are intentionally student-centered performance objectives. Other ways that we're measuring success and maybe more adult actions will show up in our KPIs, but the decision to keep our performance objectives truly student-centered was an intentional move that the Board of Education made when you approved these performance objectives. A reminder that we will disaggregate these to the greatest extent possible in whatever the data allows us to do. All right, next slide, please. So as we think about kind of the plan and we think about the structure of the plan, we are going to lead with who we are. And so I wanted to keep this slide here tonight to show a little bit about who we are as a school district and what you'll be able to see throughout the plan. You all know we have 52 schools. We have 7,000 plus staff members right now. We have over 5,000 volunteers that work in our schools on a daily basis, over 5,000 volunteers. Now, they're not, I knew you were gonna say that. Not everyone is in our school every day, but of the 5,000, many of them are in our schools all of the time. And I'm sure one of these 5,000 is in our school every day. That shows our commitment from our entire community. We have over 200 plus partnerships that work with our schools, and then we have over 25,000 students. And you see some of the demographics on the side there as well. It helps tell the story of who we are and what to do. Next slide. So our approach to get to the plan that will be unveiled shortly is going to be these next few slides. Let's see, next slide, please. So I wanted to start with board leadership, and I wanted to start with all of the input and the work that the board has had into getting us to a place of what we feel really good about and excited about in terms of the plan that we have to date. And that work started 1 year ago with the Board of Education. I mentioned this at the retreat, but the board did a visioning exercise of what did you hope to see by 2030, 2040. We were over at Madison College. And then you can see all the way up leading to today, the number of input opportunities that the board has had, whether it's through updates here, whether it's through one-on-ones, whether it's through retreats, or the board has had insight into the plan and also opportunity to provide input. So an entire year of the board's leadership really guiding us with this. I thought there was a question, I apologize. Okay, and so then how did we go beyond the Board of Education for community input and community? You can see across each one of these pillars that we had a variety of ways that we were gathering voice. First, we had the superintendent school visits, where he through the year of 24-25 visited 47 schools. Over 500 staff members and 450 students. All of that data was used to guide our plan. We had student and staff focus groups throughout all of last year. And we also had central office focus groups last year to also get input into what people thought was most important and what they wanted to see in the plan. We did a community survey, we had community focus groups, and then we had principal engagements, all kind of calculating to nearly 2,500 people providing input into our plan from across our entire community. We were really thoughtful in making sure we were intentional about representation, and I think we did a really great job of getting representation of voice in order to inform them. Next slide, please. You saw this slide at the retreat, but I just want to emphasize that at each stage, we created feedback opportunities and did an iteration, and feedback opportunities and did an iteration. So what you saw at the beginning of when we introduced content of the plan to what you will see tonight may look a little different, and that's intentional because we have created these feedback and input loops along the way for really almost a year now to ensure that we not only are honoring those 2,500 plus voices, but also making sure that we aren't stopping with draft one, that we're going through multiple drafts to get to a place that we feel really good about. Next slide, please, Jesse. And so I wanted to also just provide an overview or a reminder of the steering committee. We said the steering committee was the main body that is going to provide input into the content of the plan and really be our pressure test to tell us where we've gotten it right and where we've gotten it wrong. We had 6 sessions with that steering committee. A reminder, it was 80 plus community members, really diverse group. And this kind of on the right-hand side just shows a little bit of what each session was about. Knowing that we started with some grounding and we ended with them really doing kind of an equity review for us and giving us feedback on our strategies and KPIs. It was a great group, super interactive, and really helped us get to our draft plan. Next slide, please. You can see here, we wanted to just include a little bit of the voice from certain community members. At our last session, we asked people, we did some testimonial, so we have some video footage that will be on our website when that website is created. But we also had some written reflections of people that just shared a little bit about that experience of being on the steering committee and what it meant to them and what it also means moving forward. So I'll give everyone a second just to read those quotes. One, good, had a chance to read them?
Mhm.
Next slide, please, Josie. So that really shared kind of our approach to community input that will all live in our plan in written format as well as in other ways. So you'll see that in that final product, so everyone knows that we were intentional and that a lot of voice went into the design and the creation of the plan. In addition to that, there's other pieces of the plan that we want to make sure are present, and that is our guiding commitment around leading with equity. Throughout the last set of the process, we created ways to have an equity review or an equity lens to ensure that the strategies that we were creating truly were going to not only support all students, but we're intentional about supporting our students furthest from opportunity and students that have been historically excluded. And so when the last time we were here, we had just finished our steering committee. We talked about that, and we had indicated that we needed to do a little more work. And so after that, we did pull together a small group of individuals, cross-functional, from different groups, and had them do one more round of an equity review for us. Using some guiding questions. We used our equity tool that was approved by the board many years ago as a guidepost as well. And we made some refinements to our strategies as a whole and our focus areas to ensure that we are truly centering those that need us to center them the most. So hopefully that shows up when you see some of our drafts tonight. This will also be a section in our plan to call that out about the work that we are going to be doing. In addition to that, there's other ways that we are kind of centering how we will work moving forward under this plan. We are thinking about innovation. Originally, innovation was living in one of our focus areas, and we have decided to make it one of our ways of working because we think innovation is going to span across all of our focus areas. And so we didn't want it to live in one particular area. So there'll be some work around that. And the other is cross-functionality and collaboration. We realized that in this design of the plan, it can't live with individual departments, that we truly need to work more cross-functionally and collaboratively to try and unsilo some work. So that's something else that you will see in our plan that we are calling out. How we will do that is not yet totally figured out in terms of a large system, but our commitment to do cross-functionality more across strategies and really think about innovation across the plan are two things that will also show up in the plan when it's finalized. Okay, so next slide, Jesse. Here we are with our final focus areas. A reminder that these focus areas are really our priorities for our plan. The 5 areas that are going to drive the work, the 5 areas that strategies will fall under, our KPIs will fall under, and at some point, individual action plans and tactics. The definitions have evolved since the last time that you have seen them. So while they might feel pretty similar, there have been some language changes to really get the definitions to as close to what we think each one of these focus areas will bring to life. I'll give you a minute to look at them before I go on. In addition to kind of some updates to the focus areas and the definition, we've also made some changes to how we're thinking about our KPIs or our key performance indicators. Originally, we had a list of KPIs that we had indicated were all, there's many of them, and we had talked about those KPIs kind of measuring the overall progress of each focus area. We have made some changes and we've created primary KPIs and supplementary KPIs. And part of a reason for that is if everything is a KPI, nothing is a KPI. If you have too many things that you are measuring, we're measuring nothing and we're not getting to what this plan is intended to do, which we said is to narrow our work, streamline our work, prioritize the big areas instead of being to build up. It doesn't mean that there aren't going to be other ways that we can measure certain things that our schools might pay attention to, that we may even pay attention to here, but to really drive our plan and make sure that our plan is on track and being successful. We have changed our approach to have a primary KPI for each focus area and then supplementary KPIs. One of the things we've also been intentional is tried to use the KPIs that came from the Council of Great Cities Schools list to be our primary KPI if we were able to have a way to measure that internally with our own systems. The other reason why we did that is because we wanted to take a new approach to this plan to not only measure against ourselves, but to start to measure ourselves against these other 80 large urban districts. So we have other people to both learn from, see how we're doing in relation to that, and also have benchmarks outside of just our local area. And that's something different that we haven't really done as a system, and we thought it was a really good opportunity. And so you will also see that those KPIs, for the most part, are aligned to KPIs that the Council of Great Cities Schools has identified. Okay, next slide, please. And we will disaggregate KPIs if and where possible to the greatest extent. Next slide, please. Okay, so here we are. And this is our first focus area. When we get to our final plan, we'll have a way to I'm trying to think of the language. There will be a way to distinguish strategies and focus areas through a naming concept, so that we can, for example, assume this is focus area number 1, and then each strategy will also have a naming convention. I'm looking at TJ helping me out. I'm like, what is the language I'm trying to say? Ooh, Monday, first day back. Naming conventions so that we're also able to associate 1A, 1B. We want to have some naming conventions also, just from an organizational standpoint, as well. Sorry, that was more confusing than it had to be. And so here we are with the set of strategies. In bold is really the main concept of this strategy. What you will see in addition to that is a little more of the definition of what this strategy entails. I want to remind the board that these are high level and these should be strategies that span multiple years, right? These aren't things that we believe will be completed in a year. This is a 5-year plan. We want to create strategies that are high level and can span multiple years. Now, that doesn't mean that we might not complete some of these before the 5 years are up, which is great. But the idea is that these are very high level, and what will come underneath these strategies will be the CODIPs, the SIPs, the tactics, the more granular components that you might see on a quarterly basis, biannual basis, or yearly basis to move us closer to the completion of this. On the right-hand side, in kind of a light blue, you will see our KPIs and where we have landed in terms of primary and supplemental KPIs. A reminder that we, as I previously stated, we made some adjustments to try and really hone in first on these primary KPIs to get us started, and then these supplemental KPIs. We do believe that we may add KPIs along the way over the next few years as we learn more, as we get these strategies rolling. But we wanted to really try and narrow our approach to what we are measuring so that we all, not just in this room, we all as a system are able to articulate what we're measuring, how we're measuring it, and how we're doing. So we wanted to create a more narrowed approach.
So there's 1 KPI and then 4 supplemental?
For the future ready student experiences, yes.
Okay.
It varies for them. So Jesse, can you go to the next slide? So the next is our focus area number 2, which is operational alignment and innovation. And it's actually operational alignment and improvement, but that's okay because we pulled innovation out to have innovation across our entire framework. But this is a draft, so it's totally fine. What you will see going down are the main strategies. You'll see 5 strategies. Responsive and student-centered operations, increasing enrollment, equitable and strategic budgeting, modernizing our facilities, and sustainability. I'll call out sustainability because when we met with the board in November, certain board members, I can't remember who had mentioned, really the fact that we should have something related to sustainability. So it is one of the adjustments we've made, as well as there's others. On the right-hand side, you will see our primary KPI, which is budget expenditures efficiency, which is also something that comes from the Council of Great City Schools. This is something that we have not monitored or measured before, so we're really excited about what this can look like and what this will mean for really the entire framework as a whole and where we land with our priorities. And then you'll notice some of our supplemental. FRL is free and reduced lunch, just in case that acronym was not. Next slide, please. Professional excellence and talent development. We've made some changes here. We focused on representative staff as opposed to diverse staff. We had gotten some feedback around that. And knowing that our student population is only 39% white and the majority is students of color, we wanted to be really thoughtful about this idea of representative for our staff to represent our student populations. We have some new staff supports, employee growth, a culture of feedback, and competitive compensation. Many of these have been adjusted since the last time you saw them. Our primary KPI is going to be staff retention. And it's the inverse. We tried to focus on KPIs that had positive language versus sometimes the language might feel negative. And so we want to focus on the staff that are staying versus the staff that are leaving. You'll see our supplementary KPIs as well. Next slide, please. Culture of connectedness and well-being. This also has had quite a few changes since the last time you saw it. Really focusing on strengthening our school culture. I think we've had 2 conversations with the board recently that I think address this and this idea of our culture and it being more interconnected and integrated versus siloed, as some of our conversations may have felt recently. Focusing on a restorative approach, staff well-being. We wanted to make sure that this wasn't just student-centered, this also focused on staff. We've heard that a lot in our input sessions and in our feedback. Mental health supports, I think we've heard that tonight. We need to continue that. And then voice. Last time you saw this, it was really only focused on student voice, and since then we have added staff voice. We've heard the importance of having mechanisms and ways for staff to have voice and input outside of what we currently do. Our primary KPI for this one is instructional days missed due to suspensions. We were trying to think of what the council has and also trying to think about something outside of just suspensions to focus on. And so this idea of our instructional days we thought was a really important measure to look at. And then you'll see some of our supplemental KPIs as well. Our staff climate survey, our student climate survey, our climate survey overall for staff, students, and families is showing up in here a lot. Student attendance, we know we talked about student attendance a lot when we were talking about performance objectives. Next slide, please. And our final 5th focus area is family, community, and industry partnerships. This also has changed some since you saw it. Our first is around our family experience. Our second is around strengthening partnerships. But this is really shifting to ensure that we're focusing on partnerships that meet our diverse student population. And similar to the conversation we just had, we want to really focus on partnerships that maybe offer linguistic supports to meet our students' needs racially and or socially. Coordinated with our community organization, we want to have more of this 2-way collaboration, not just a 1-way. So we want to leverage each other's expertise. That has changed since last time I saw it. Industry partnerships, that is really an area that we want to continue to grow, really to create more opportunities for our students. And then career aligned learning opportunities, that has also changed since the last time you saw it. And our primary KPI, while this one is not directly connected to the Council of Great City Schools, they didn't have a perfect KPI for this area yet. Something that I think we're going to continue to have conversations with them about. We thought a good primary KPI was the number of active community and industry partnerships. And then looking at that also over time in terms of where we land with their meeting their goals. We've had a conversation around their end of year goals that they set with us. And so that is kind of where we've landed on our fifth focus area. And then you'll notice our family climate survey. And then, as I mentioned, the idea of formal partnerships and meeting their end of year goals is also supplemental. Jesse, next slide. So what is under construction still? I've named some of the things that you haven't seen yet, but a few other areas that are under construction. There'll be introductory letters from leaders such as our superintendent, probably our board president, and we are looking for other leaders as well that are really integral to our work as an MMSD community, that are also going to share a little bit of what this framework, MMSD Excellence Together, means to them, potentially a student as well. So there'll be some introductory leaders. Our brand identity, we thought it was really important with this new framework to also make sure we are uplifting and naming a little bit about our brand, as that is a huge part of who we are and who we are moving forward. Our baseline data, what you will see, remember, we won't have our baseline data until the end of the school year. So we won't be able to do our goal setting until that point. And so we won't have that ready until the summer, but that baseline data and our methodology will be in there. It'll be really important to know where we are starting with this plan and then where we intend to go over the next 5 years. Our broad approach to all of the work, I mentioned a few of those areas: innovation, cross-functionality, equity, or review. And then a glossary. I thought it was really important to have a short glossary, but this is a community-facing plan. So we want to make sure that the community is able to digest and understand that plan. And with that, it might mean that we need to create a glossary and also to ensure we're calibrated on some of the language we are using in the plan, because there could be multiple definitions. So we'll have a glossary. Next slide, please. You can just click on all of them. So just a reminder, we are in year 0, 25-26, and this is the year that we will collect our baseline data to be able to set our targets and our goals for the next 5 years. Next year, 26-27, which will be year 1, a reminder that we at central office will begin to implement the plan. We will create our co-dips aligned to the new plan, but our schools will be closing out year 3 of their current school improvement plan and will not be formally implementing our new plan next year. Now, there might be some pieces of that plan that the schools will start to take on, but the schools are going to be working on their SIP. And remember, their current SIP is a 3-year SIP. They've set their strategies. They're on track. They're going to continue to close that out. And then in year 2, which is 27-28, our schools will come in, they'll have drafted new school improvement plans, and that's when their kind of formal implementation of MMSD Excellence Together will happen. And then years 3 to 5 will all be together working on this plan with the closeout of the plan of June of 2030. Slide, please, Jesse. So that is where we are with the plan. I hope you see that there's been changes, the input that the board has shared recently and along the way is showing up, and the other pieces that will be coming to create an entire product, if you will, that will have our entire plan ready to go. We'll launch softly in February with our schools, mostly just the pieces you saw. And then our entire product and the full plan will be launched this summer. when we have our baseline data ready and are able to have a full product to release to the community. With that, Board Chair, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you so much. Board members, your questions? Board Member Vandermeulen, I see you first.
Yes, I'm thinking we need to actually go back to something and redo the MMSD vision statement. It says, "Will be a learning community where all students are valued, challenged, supported, and inspired to reach for their dreams." Yet there's no mention of disability whatsoever. There's no mention of African-American children excelling in school. And I understand that we're doing it differently, but how are we going to include equity if we can't even name it?
Thank you so much for your comments.
That's all I do.
Member Vandermeulen. Further questions or discussion? Board Member Saravo?
Thank you, Chair Muldrow. I guess I'm just gonna put there, I think of as broad as possible when I'm thinking of the things that are coming from the top down, so I'm including all students and some of the broader statements that we have up. But definitely understand why you're passionate about that, Board Vanderbilt, so thank you. I guess like the only thing that kind of, I like how you guys are going into like the family climate survey space and like intentionally kind of diving in there, which is really interesting because when we were at the Council for Great City Schools, I'd asked questions in one of the rooms about what are we doing with families to really like include them. And it was actually about special education in that room too. And Milwaukee, who was one of the presenters, literally said back to me, we're not doing enough. So that seems to be a space that they need some additional pieces in. So I'm really glad to see that in there. I'm hoping that when you do like this survey to like be intentional, like I think we're continuously doing it, but in continuing to be intentional of making sure that we're reaching the very diverse amount of families that we in Madison, because that's always a worry, but I really like the intention that's gonna go into that direction. Just because like students don't exist in a vacuum in the schools, everything that's happening at home comes in. And I like that approach of broadening it and bringing the making the families feel like they're more connected with the schools too. So I think that's something that might get lost when you're in a really big district as well.
We've talked a lot about different ways to administer and push out surveys based on our response rates. And so I hope you'll see kind of in a part of the plan where we talk about some of the research and some of the pieces that is something we're thinking about and new ways to not just the survey, but how we get people to actually complete the survey is one of the things we're thinking. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I like the idea of the glossary about that too. I'm constantly doing that when I'm going into some of these when we're using all of the all the acronyms that are used. So I also find that a really valuable addition to things that are coming out that may include a lot of. Yeah.
Thank you, Board Member Saravo. Board President Nichols?
Thank you, Chair. Well, thank you for bringing this back to us. I think it's super helpful to see the focus areas and now the strategies along with the KPIs, because at the last time I saw this, we didn't have that middle piece. And I think it brought up a lot of questions for us. So it's super helpful to see all of it together. I'm gonna just go a couple at a time. I mean, one at a time. For the focus areas, it doesn't look like you made major changes to those, right? With the exception of a few words here and there, but the overall focus areas have stayed the same.
From the last time. I mean,
From the last
through
time.
working through them.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Over the
Okay.
year, they've changed
Yeah.
drastically, but from the last time we saw them, yes, some definition language changes about what you would see. Yeah.
Okay.
At this point, yes.
And so just as I just want to make sure I'm checking the way I'm using the way as a board member, I should be referencing a focus area.
Mhm.
It says these broad, high-level themes express what we're committed to improving or addressing as a system. They reflect what matters most across the district and will be the major buckets that will organize our strategies and key performance indicators. So we have those three performance objectives. And now you have these focus areas. And I was just wondering, just maybe as a reminder again, Cindy or Dr. Gothard, can you help explain how as a board member, we're going between those performance objectives and then the focus areas and getting a better sense that things are moving in the right direction?
Yeah, I think, Chair Mulder, President Nichols, the one way we might think about it is those performance objectives are universal for the entire plan. So the way in which these strategies, these strategies together, the KPIs together,
okay.
collectively are going to guide our performance objectives because they're broad enough at system level. They should be.
Okay,
If we want to get down to the gritty, as Cindy talked about, you're down at the CODIP or the SIP level, but the KPIs again are going to be indicators so we can ensure that our work as a district is aligned with the needs of schools. And
Okay.
we need to know if we're effective in doing that work. So that'll be a really important, the KPIs will be important for the overall success of the plan, but it will be really important for us to calibrate our efforts to ensure schools are being supported the way that they need to be as
okay.
well.
So I'm gonna hold that. Thank you for that. So when I come to future ready student experiences, just as one example, we have a big performance objective around academic achievement. You all have given us a host of strategies, right? Around, we're gonna have grade level standards aligned, culturally and linguistically responsive instruction, literacy achievement and growth, math achievement and growth, early learning, college, career, and community opportunities, and then opportunities outside of the classroom. Love that. Those are the big strategies. Then our primary KPI is 9th grade core course pass rate, which aligns with great city schools. There are some supplemental ones. And I think what I'm trying to see is if you all come back with data, your KPI data, and you go, here's our 9th grade core course pass rate. And then here's our Spanish summative assessments for DLI. We know the high school completion comes kind of a year later kind of thing. Here's the number of early learning programs available. And here's our co-curricular participation rate. I'm not sure yet that I would look at those KPIs and go, yes, we're gonna not hit our performance objectives. Like, I don't mean it like it's a one-time thing. But I don't know exactly how those tell me that we're gonna increase overall student achievement as measured by, the language that we approved. And so this is not to nitpick, it's more about how things talk to each other and how does at a board level, when we're using KPIs, we've got it like, the way I understood the KPIs, they're like kind of the pulse. They're giving us an indicator of how the system is responding, or maybe I heard that wrong. And I know these aren't perfect.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So my question is, when I'm looking at the KPIs, are the KPIs about the strategies, or are the KPIs data that tell us if we're moving in the right direction on the bigger performance objective?
So,
Or is it both and?
so it's a little bit of, oh, sorry. Does that?
You're not,
Mhm.
you need me to,
Yeah, so I guess I'm thinking it boils down to, are the KPIs key performance indicators? Are they showing that we have achieved the goal? Or are they showing that we've made progress towards the goal? Is that the question?
Yeah, I'm just thinking because we'll be newer in this
Yeah.
development of using KPIs. And so when I see these, I'm not saying I think they're the wrong KPIs. I just don't know if they would
So
help us.
they're not, so let me.
Okay.
In the way that, as of now, that they're intended. Like, I think one thing maybe you were hoping to see would be like, I'm making this up, but like literacy and math screener data, right? Like, you have literacy and math screener data as a supplemental KPI. That is a direct connection for you to our performance objective, as an example. Right?
Yeah, and more connected to each of the strategies, but I,
Right, so the intent as it is developed now is not that these are direct connections to our 3 performance objectives. That's not,
oh,
that's not necessarily the goal. The idea is that the KPIs are helping us measure our progress of our strategies and our overall focus area. We're saying our student future, it's almost like a theory of change, right? We're saying if we do all of these things, these strategies, and we create these action plans, we believe that doing all of them directly or indirectly will impact these 3 performance objectives, but not necessarily a direct correlation. This is telling us these are the strategies that we're saying we're gonna do over the next few years. Are we making progress on these strategies? KPIs are telling us, yeah, you're making progress on these strategies. You assume, right, it's this theory, you assume if you're making progress on the strategies and the KPIs, that you will directly or indirectly influence
okay,
the performance objectives. But there isn't a necessarily a one-to-one correlation that you can say these KPIs. I could see how they're gonna directly influence each individual performance objective, because it's all of these things working together in concert. All 5 focus areas, all of these strategies together are supposed to be moving our system as a whole, which in turn moves our student outcomes as a whole.
okay, that's helpful. So,
It's really a different way that we're thinking about an approach to our plan that we haven't done in this way.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I'm looking at the KPIs then for future ready student experiences, what I should be holding is once we know our baseline.
Yep.
If we see more students in 9th grade passing their courses. If we see more students in grades 3 through 8 doing something on Achieve 3000, I don't exactly know what that is, and I'm sorry. If we see our graduation rates improving, particularly for our disaggregated data, right? Like really honing in on students. If we see the number of early learning programs available to families within the district or community.
Because we're continuing
Thing.
to expand like
Expanding.
our early opportunities to get kids in as early as possible.
And if we keep doing that
And then
year after year,
and
we should see academic achievement increase. Okay,
that plus the other 4 areas.
right.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to test it out on that one, cause, so
And
that,
remember, the one other thing I will, sorry, Board President Nichols, the one other thing I will say is that what we see here, a reminder, isn't everything that we assess and we measure in the system, right?
right,
However, what we're trying to do is say, let's hyper focus and narrow the things that we're monitoring more formally on a regular basis to ensure that we're continuing to try and pay attention to the things that we're saying we should be paying attention to. Does that make sense?
mm-hmm. Okay, so can I just ask a couple more follow-ups on,
Of course.
Yeah,
or is
I'm
that
gonna
a,
use the restroom, and so when you are done, Board Member Saravo had a second round of questions, and we should just shift to her.
okay, thank you. On the operational alignment and innovation, I'm not nitpicking, I just wanna make sure I understand.
Yeah.
So that primary KPI of budget expenditure efficiency,
Mhm.
which is what the Great City Schools does, is that like an efficiency rate, or is it more of a narrative, or I'm intrigued by that one. I just don't know, what does it look like as a KPI? Do you know?
I don't know
Yeah.
formally, yeah,
Okay.
I've seen the other districts, but it's going to help us, one, look at the strategic plan that we have here and how we are aligning our resources to our strategic plan, like how are we thinking differently about where we're putting our dollars, that is one. And then how we are being efficient with our funds. So we have examples, cause the council just released their operation KPIs from this past year, so
Oh.
we can share an example from other districts in terms of what that looks like specifically, but it's a new way for us to
Yeah.
really think about use of our dollars.
Yeah, and I think the other thing it will help us do is come up with a way that we can look at and check how we're funding our strategies and if our strategies are meeting our goal. You saw one of the examples in the partnership later was partnerships that are meeting their end of year goals. It's really important. I mean, we have a lot of partners, we always have. And a key question I'm always thinking about is, are we meeting our mark? And if we're not, is that an investment that we should continue?
Okay,
So this budget efficiency is kind of along that road.
okay, great. Thank you for that.
And it's gonna push us all, it'll be hard conversations, but good conversations.
For the professional excellence and talent development. I see staff retention. Is the primary. Student staff proportionality. What does that mean exactly?
It goes really to that first strategy where we're trying to move to our staff being more representative of our student population. So the proportionality of who our students are demographically to who our staff are. So it's looking at proportionality around that representation.
Got it, okay,
And when that's displayed, that will be clear.
yeah,
If we have 39% of our student population is white, what is the proportion of our staff population that is white? Is it proportion, right? Or is it over-representation, under-representation?
got it, okay.
Proportionality.
Can I ask you the description for this focus area,
Which one?
professional excellence and
Uh-huh.
talent development? In the very bottom of this sentence, it says,
Can we?
position MMSD as an employer of choice to attract, develop, and retain a representative, skilled, and well-supported workforce that flourishes professionally and personally. The personally part, are we thinking? Well, I'll leave it alone. Okay,
Did you skipping that? Okay.
no, I'm sensing that the energy, I'm gonna be done. I can follow up. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh,
Board Member Saravo, it's all you.
okay. Something I was gonna. No, wait for a second.
Y'all, Board Member Saravo is waiting for you all to finish up your conversation before she asks questions.
Only because it's more directed and like I feel, thank you, Chair Muldrow. I just wanted to finish up while I was bringing up the point that I was making before about the families piece. Because the reason that the districts were presenting, and there was a whole bunch of larger districts doing it, they were also talking about the amount of complaints that were put into like, in here would be complaints to DPI, especially with families who are in special education. And a lot of times it's a last resort. And so during that point, I was bringing, the reason I brought that up there, and I'm gonna bring it up here intentionally, is that, is there something to be gained from giving families more access to better information? Or more feeling that they're more supported somehow in the work in an intentional way? Where they will not have to feel that their only option is to write a formal complaint to DPI in order to get something resolved. Like that is an outcome I'm wondering if more intention is put towards giving families resources, you know, like Anna Moffat in her role as a family ombudsman has a lot of resources there. Sometimes families just don't have enough. I'm just wondering, is that something that would have a space in there of being drawn into some sort of intentional outcome that resonates some?
Is your, I'm thinking in a few different lanes of
Mhm.
how to address this. The first is customer service.
Mhm.
You know, just the way we engage, follow through, present information, follow through with information.
Yeah.
The next one is technical.
Mhm.
How are we delivering what we say we're supposed to deliver, or what the law says we're supposed to? You know, are you talking about both of them together, or?
I think there's like, I don't know what families feel that they're given like upfront. Like how much of the information are we providing? So we have so much information that goes into this, and when you're a parent or a family member who's taking in all the information at the front end, it gets very overwhelming. And sometimes the overwhelming turns into, I don't know who to turn to. Then you start just diving into the abyss of the internet to try to find like who to. And in a more supportive structure, where you're very focused on intentional outreach to families and saying, hey, let us know. We want to resolve this locally without you having to go to that extra step and do it through a bigger system, which is there intentionally and for good reason. Some, you know, I understand why it's there. I'm just wondering if something more intentional to families that is more proactive would be of a benefit and it have a result of not having as many complaints due to DPI because we are able to resolve things at the table.
I think it's fair to say that 2,500 people, more, you know, part of that is hours of engagement.
Mhm.
These strategies will also necessitate additional engagement.
Right.
So I think you're getting to that place where, sure.
Yeah, I know this is very specific.
Maybe a specific strategy where there is additional engagement to get a baseline, you know, for a strategy that's specifically looking at the number of complaints.
Okay. Thank you.
As a possibility.
Yeah.
Thank you, Board Member Mosner. I'm sorry,
Okay.
moving to Board Member Mosner.
Thanks for your work on all of this. I feel like I'm getting a stronger picture. And that's really exciting. I have two sort of specific questions. One is, when schools start doing SIPs for this, are they gonna be 4-year SIPs?
That's a great question. I don't know that we've determined that yet. They will have 4 years to implement, and we believe that it'll be a 4-year SIP, or we talked about 2-year SIPs. We just haven't made that decision yet, and I think what we're hearing from schools so far, and Dr. Stanford can kind of chime in on this, is that they like the 3-year SIP right now. They like a multi-year SIP, and so we know it'll be multi-year, but I don't know that we've determined.
And because the SIPs are sorry, we have the opportunity to make any adjustments, and so it just makes sense to have it be that longer period of time rather than having them re-enter the process.
Cool.
Consistency.
Yeah.
And then my other question is about, so we've been getting those quarterly data reports from RAI that are based on the existing SIPs, DIPs, and co-dips. And I've said in those rooms often, like right, they're student outcome focused, but like for decision-making bodies like the board, the student outcome focus is not actually necessarily how we would be making decisions. With the KPIs, we're getting closer to that, but is the idea here that the KPIs would be the data that we're getting on the regular to make those sort of choices, or is there a different data set that we would be looking at?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I don't know that we've determined the deliverables yet in terms of the plan. And I think you absolutely will get updates on the KPIs, especially the primaries to begin with. We are thinking about how to do a better, different way of providing updates on the strategies and the focus areas along the way going into next year, this affords us an opportunity to even think about this space differently, right? And so that might be the way it's approached. And I think there will be data beyond what's in this plan that will still show up for the board.
Sure.
I think the one thing I would say is back to this budget efficiency and back to kind of the point of a plan is I think this plan will allow us to think differently or more intentionally about where and how we're making decisions as it relates to these focus areas or priorities. Back to this budget conversation we had before with mental health, right? If it's not in the plan, the question is that something or not? Maybe. So, yeah.
I guess so, the one that sticks out to me is in the professional excellence and talent development, where we would expand professional development opportunities for growth by ensuring every employee has access to relevant, high quality job embedded learning. But someone has to decide how it's relevant and high quality, and so I'm kind of curious about that, but it really feels like it's coming together. MMSD together, coming together. I can really see that together. I really see in the strategies that you've laid out here that it's not insular. It's quite the opposite of siloed, right? It really asks of our whole community to engage with all of the young people who are students here. And that's, I think, really, I love it. And did I have one other question? Yeah, what is percent of applicants who apply in the first week?
In professional excellence and.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want me to answer that? Yeah, so that is, we are trying to ensure, if you remember over the last few years, we're trying to be as fast and as efficient as possible with individuals that are applying to our system and getting a response from us within a particular window of time.
Got it. Okay.
Understood. We heard before onboarding, applying, moment of time that you hear from someone along the way. So we're creating some internal measures to ensure that that improves, because when that improves, people wanna come here.
Sure.
And tell their friends and their cousins.
Definitely. Okay. Yeah, I really appreciate this update. This is a big task to figure out, okay, well, of all of the amazing things that we're doing, which ones are working and which aren't, and how do we know? And I look forward to that work, and nice. Yeah, that's it.
If I could just add, we have given ourselves a bit of a safety net. If you look at and I don't have the slide number, the performance objective slide.
CD and stuff.
In the blue margin on performance objectives at the bottom, it does say additional measures will be tracked to the school or at the school district level to provide a more holistic picture of our success. So we've given ourselves room to customize this because we want to make sure it's informing our progress and guiding our decisions. That's what this is for.
Yeah.
It's not to say, let's put something on there where we know we're going to do great and, celebrate because we hit it. No, we want this to be a true look at how we are operating and guide us to make really excellent decisions.
We're also giving,
and as I recall from our previous discussions, the KPI indicators will be disaggregated every time.
where possible.
Yeah, where possible.
And I would just say that we're trying to give ourselves the ability to make adjustments with the plan in general along the way. As I said before, we have these strategies, we might meet some of these strategies faster, and we might realize after a year or two, a strategy might not be right. So we want this plan to be super solid and stabilize our system. And we know that there's going to be potential adjustments throughout it over the next 5 years, which it should. 2031, people, 2031.
All right, we have additional questions or comments from board members in relationship to this update. I really appreciate the work we've done as a board.
Hey, I'm so sorry.
Board Member Castro, you have additional questions and comments related to this update?
My one question is, do we have a evaluation plan for the strategies listed?
So I would say not outside of the measurement of the KPIs at this point. I think the KPIs are our greatest measure right now. And then we're also thinking about more uh, progress updates around completion, I guess, or deliverable components. Are we on track with this? Did this get completed at the action plan level, at the strategy level? But that's the extent of what I would say is evaluation. Does that make sense? Board
Yeah,
member?
yeah, absolutely. And I think that could be a conversation somewhere else about district program evaluation and all that. But that's my question. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you.
I think we got a tremendous amount of information from this presentation, and my only question is for Board President Nichols, and I am curious about whether or not we will be able to talk about kind of the information we gathered this evening at a board retreat so that we can maybe have a deeper dive into what we can expect long-term in terms of executing this work.
And I think we can, if I may, I think we can best align that with where we are in the rollout as well, just to make sure we're sequencing it in the right way. Absolutely.
I really appreciate the additional opportunity to speak to this particular update. There are no further questions or comments from board members. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.